Since the release of Caelesti Update 46, there's been a good number of people seeking out the earliest Caelesti devlogs, and presumably catching up on the 4 or so years of on and off development to the pack. I actually ended up making a brand new playlist which sorts every pack development video into chronological order, and it's really cool to see how invested some of you truly are. That said, there are a lot of features that have been in Caelesti in the past, but are no longer present today, and there isn't really a single video or set of update showcases that you can watch to see what exactly is in the pack in its current state. So, without further ado, I'd like to present to you the first What's in Caelesti. This is going to be a doozy, so get yourself a drink and maybe a snack, and almost definitely throw this up on the second monitor because I'm about to yap. Okay, so just a heads up before I get into the rest of this video, that intro segment that I've just made, that you've just watched, 40 seconds worth of introduction, that was scripted, that was fully planned out and edited nicely in my usual style. The rest of this video is not going to be. This is just going to be me rambling about whatever I see on screen at the time. So if you're not a fan of that format, if you don't like hearing me breathe or stumble over my words, then this ain't the video for you. But if you're okay with that sort of thing, then hopefully this will be quite an enjoyable thing to just stick on in the background, I would hope. So we're going to start out here on the main menu. There's not really much to show on the main menu. I actually used to have a really high-definition Minecraft logo as part of my packs, but then they added it to vanilla, so I just removed it. We do have a bunch of custom, what are these? Splash texts, I guess you could say. They actually reload whenever you open the replay mod, so there we go. Got the Blood Moon Rises, which is a reference to an old data pack that I used to make called Scalabar's Better Sleeping, where I added a blood moon and, like, an army of blood moon related mobs. That was sick, actually. I should probably do that again, but I probably won't. Lava ants, that's in reference to the Striders. We have How Much Dedicated Ram, which is, I mean, we all know that one. Come on, we all know that one. I'm not going to go through all of these. There's over 100. But a bunch of different custom splash texts. Some of them are for the coffee donators and the long-time members of the Discord server. So if you ever see something which clearly has, like, no logical relation to Minecraft, then that's probably what it is. The buttons are very simple. They're just grayscale. It's just like, I think these are each 3 colors. You've got a dark tone, a light tone, and a mid tone, and then they invert whenever you mouse over them, and they have a much darker tone for when the button is moused over. This is okay. I'm not really bothered, to be honest with you. In my mind, the menu is not that big of a deal. As someone who's also done game development in the past, I don't really care much for things like menu buttons because, frankly, this is not a screen that you're going to be looking at for very long. The whole point of this screen is to very cleanly update your settings and then get into game as soon as you can. Like, that's what you want to do with this screen. So it doesn't need to be beautiful. If it is, great, bonus, but it's not necessary. So this has always been like a low priority for me. These buttons were made quite some time ago. They are the second iteration of these buttons. I had some ridiculously simple ones in, I think, Caelesti version 0.2. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple stuff. I have a custom button for the language screen. It just makes it look a little bit more at home with the rest of the language that you see on the menu. How do I describe that? I mean, the language button is usually like a globe, right? I think it's a globe anyway, but I've made it so that it's just AA because it's just text, right? Like, it's just the language, which I think makes it look a little bit nicer. And we also have the accessibility button in the bottom corner as well, which is also custom. But that's about it. There isn't really much else to say for the main menu, other than, of course, the background panorama, which you're looking at right now and have been for a good minute or two now. So the background panorama is kind of an inconsistent thing with Caelesti. I said in Update 46 that I wanted to have a unique background panorama for every update for Caelesti, but historically that has not happened. And even in Update 47, I forgot to do a new background panorama. I was looking at this today and I was like, oh, I didn't do a background panorama for Update 47. Shit, I guess I just forgot. So we still have this, dirt and lily pad featured panorama. I will do a custom panorama for Update 48 for sure. I've already got one in mind based on what's going to be in the update. But for now, you'll have to stick with this lovely mangrove and swamp that we've taken this in here. So without further ado, let's get into the test world and we'll go over everything else, which is pretty much everything in Caelesti other than the menu. So here we are in 121.8. This is likely going to be the last video I ever make in 121.8. I am already in the process of making Caelesti Update 48 for 121.11. Although they're now doing the new snapshot system, right? Where it's like, 26.1, which is going to be the first drop of this year, I believe. I do like the new update format. I think that's a good way to go. We've skipped all the way from Minecraft 1 to Minecraft 26, which is pretty sweet, really. But yeah, that's fine. I'm good for it. is just keep making texture packs in it. So yeah, hopefully this video is going to remind a lot of you of the like old school format of me doing this, because I've just laid out a huge line of blocks, and it's so long that you can't even see all of it. You can't even see half of it here. Like, this video is going to be long as shit. So this is day one of me recording this. Maybe I'll do it in one go. Maybe I'll do it in a week. I have no idea. So let's just get into it. The very first block that I want to talk about is Bedrock. And there isn't really much to say about Bedrock. This is one of the older textures in the pack right now. The way that I've laid this out right now is the first couple of things that we're going to talk about are like simple features. Features that don't have things like variants or mod integration or anything particularly special or fancy about them. They're just a simple retexture, which is quite rare in Caelesti. There aren't really many of these things in this category, but I'll try and give a hint as to what's going on. Maybe you can check the video chapters, so we'll just be on like simple blocks right now, I guess. But Bedrock is arguably the most simple feature in Caelesti. It's just this texture on all four sides. I think this uses about 5 colors, maybe 6, I'm not really sure. The whole point of this texture is it's supposed to look dense. Like, you find this and it's like, oh, I can't break that. Like, that's what it's supposed to insinuate, you know? So Bedrock is quite simple. Bedrock does have one fancy mod integration quirk to it, but that's not going to appear in this video for quite some time. So I guess stick around if you want to find out. So yeah, this block is actually inspired from one of the first packs I ever used myself, which was Craft. And Craft is a pretty old resource pack, a texture pack when it was first started, I guess, which just simply changes Minecraft to have a kind of a cartoony and a bit of a dark and gritty art style. And I really liked it. I used to use it quite a lot back in the day. So the Bedrock in that pack inspired my own Bedrock. And there was actually a point in the past where, well before Caelesti, the times of SCDT and SCUR, or SCUR, as it lovingly became, where I would basically just take features from other people's packs and just shamelessly steal them and redistribute them, which was terrible, and I don't do that anymore. The whole point of Caelesti was me kind of like cleaning up my act and getting things together. So at one point, I did actually just have the Craft Bedrock in my pack, and I missed it so much in Caelesti that I wanted to add my own spin on it, so that's kind of what this is. It's just supposed to be like a mimicry of the Craft Bedrock. But it tiles okay, you know, it tiles alright, it appears on every side of the texture, so it's pretty bland. But that's Bedrock, there we go. And I've talked way too long about a single feature, and we have hundreds to go through. Let's just move on very quickly. Next up, we have Terracotta, all 17 colors of Terracotta. I always find it interesting with Terracotta how you've got like the base Terracotta, and then you also have the 16 colored versions. Why not just make the base Terracotta like orange? Or maybe like gray? I guess it doesn't actually match up with any of them that well, does it? Well, never mind. Anyway, so yeah, we have 17 colors of Terracotta. This Terracotta texture is actually taken from Minecraft Dungeons, would you believe it? The side texture is, at least. Anyway, the top texture is my own. So what's going on here is, a while ago now, Christ, when Dungeons was first being made, when it first came out, people would take all of the assets from Dungeons and sort of like redistribute them online as a source of inspiration for Minecraft texture pack creation, because there were a lot of like custom sounds that were on theme, and there were custom textures that really fit the vibe very well. So people would look through all the files and be like, I can take that, I can use that, I can tweak that. And that's what happened here. So I basically took what is essentially the exact terracotta texture from Minecraft Dungeons. This wasn't taken directly from the files. I did actually recreate this by hand, but it's just the same. Like I basically just stole it by redrawing it, I guess, and then recolored it for all 17 types. Now, I haven't really given any actual thought into what I want to do with terracotta yet in Caelesti, so this is sort of like a temporary stand-in type feature, but I would want to do something like this, but more complex in the future. You all know by now when it comes to like natural blocks, I love to do my 8 variants and CTM tiling and CTM repeat and unique top textures. This is kind of like a predecessor to all of those types of ideas, and it's just been in Caelesti for ages now, so it's probably going to stay around for a little bit longer as well. But yeah, it looks pretty good. I really like it. They're all rotated as well, so you can see this one simple pattern on the top is actually rotated around each time, which just gives it a little bit more variety when you see a large flat floor of terracotta, which I should have prepared but didn't because I'm bad. There you go, you can see it's a little bit more random. You don't get much tiling. One of the things I dislike the absolute most in this game is when you look at a giant floor and it all just looks the same. Hate it. Don't know why. I absolutely hate it. I think it looks really bad. I think sometimes it can look good, like with blocks that look man-made. Like, I mean, this is a really prime example of me just contradicting myself immediately, because every single 4x4 section of texture in this looks identical and is so simple. But my argument here is that because Quartz is man-made and is naturally a very clean texture, that this is okay. But it's all subject to change. I constantly change everything in Caelesti. So let's go over Quartz. So first of all, Quartz blocks. These are just a simple Quartz texture, which has a very, very low contrast to make it look as clean as possible. The thing that kind of prompted me to do this was actually when they added bone blocks to the game. And there were a lot of people who were commenting on the fact that bone blocks were now a more clean white building material than Quartz itself. And that just made no sense to me. In my mind, Quartz is an expensive building block and kind of hard to come... Excuse me. Kind of hard... I don't know if I'm going to edit that out. Am I going to edit that out? Probably not. Probably not. I can't be... Have a burp. Why not? There's going to be a few more, yeah, I'm quite sure. So, Quartz. Quartz is supposed to be quite a clean building block, right? And then Bone came out, and then Bone was like looking way more clean than Quartz. So I changed both Quartz and Bone to kind of like reciprocate their status and like how rare they are more effectively. So Quartz is naturally a cleaner and brighter block to build with, and Bone is just more bone colored. It doesn't look like really white and clean. It looks kind of browned and old and stained, and we'll see more about that afterwards. But yeah, so here's my Quartz block texture. We also have chiseled Quartz. I had a bit of fun making these. These all tile together quite nicely, so you can see here all of the different shapes tiled together quite effectively. The top texture of this one is also quite nice as well. And we also have Quartz tiles as well. These are supposed to be called Quartz tiles, but I'm just bad at keeping track of my like language file updates. So they're still called Quartz bricks, sadly. But yeah, these are usually Quartz bricks in vanilla, and I've changed them out to be these like 4x4 sections of tiles, because I just think they look really nice. And they also go really well with my dark Prismarine tiles, which we'll also go over shortly. Just shortly, in inverted commas. But yeah, then we also have the Quartz pillar. I guess I kind of already contradicted myself, because this is supposed to be simple blocks, and this one just straight up has CTM. But yeah, the Quartz pillar is pretty nice. It looks like this, usually. You can see the actual item texture does not use the CTM. It only gets these sort of features when you actually place it down in world. But all of the textures that you see on this item are present on Quartz pillars if they're placed horizontally like this. So you still get that like almost log-looking texture on the side when they're placed like this. And the idea of this is that you can build archways with them, and you can see here that they actually like link up quite nicely, I guess. So the side texture is quite simple. You've got like 4 sections with a little bit of shading on them. And then the top part here, you have these 2 horizontal lines running across the top and bottom of the Quartz pillar when it's horizontal. And they actually link up really nicely with the spiral texture that you see on either side. So the idea is this is supposed to be for people who are like really lazy builders like me and just want to be able to just build an archway entirely out of one block, and it naturally just looks better for them. You know, so that was kind of the whole point of this. And I think it looks good. I've never used these. I've never once actually built anything with this myself. But maybe one of you have. So, you know, if you have and you've built something pretty, then do let me know. It would be cool to see how you guys are making use of these textures. And same again with the top texture of the Quartz pillar as well. You can see here it actually lines up quite nicely with this like 3x3 section that we have. So you have quite a lot of variety with Quartz. You have like 4x4 tiles, you have clean textures, you have this unique abstract design, and you have 3x3 tiles as well. So there's quite a lot of variety here. Last but not least, we have smooth Quartz, which is just Quartz, but without the border. That's it. That's all there is going on here. It's a bad example. There you go. So you've got the border on this one, which is like darker around the edges, and this one just does not have that. This is actually quite an interesting little factoid here. When I was designing this texture, someone encouraged me to do this in a really specific way because of a way that people were building with Quartz and smooth Quartz in vanilla Minecraft. So if you place smooth and then regular, you get this like 2x1 brick effect, and then you can stagger these, and it looks like a giant brick wall. Like that, you see? So that effect, so someone kind of told me that this is what people were using Quartz for in vanilla, because the same effect applies in vanilla Minecraft. So I was kind of aware of that and tried to make sure that my own Quartz blocks reflected that same style in case people wanted to build in that same way while using Caelesti. No idea if any builders would actually use Caelesti. I feel like it changes far too much stuff to be a builder's pack, but who knows? Up next, we have the rather infamous diamond and emerald block. These have changed more times than you can possibly know. I just keep updating them and tweaking them and adding to them and upgrading them and changing them. And I no doubt will probably end up changing. Definitely the diamond block, definitely. The emerald block I'm more happy with. I really like the way this looks. It's how do I describe this? I look at this and I've spent so much time on this texture and I like it, but I don't know why I like it. It's a weird feeling. Like, I can look at this and I understand that it looks good to me, and I would love it if every other part of Caelesti looked on this level, but I don't even have the language to describe why I think this looks good. And looking at it now, I'm actually recognizing that it could probably use some like bright white in the corners here to make this like gleam stand out more. So I'm probably going to change it again. But that's kind of what happens with these. It's more of like an experiment, like just me attempting to make these specific textures over and over again. Because I once took a stab at these very early into the development of Caelesti, and then I was just unhappy with them and remade them and ended up in a bit of a remake loop with specifically these two blocks. But they're looking okay now. You will typically only see these when you have a beacon. I am quite a fan of an emerald beacon myself in vanilla. So yeah, you do actually see these more often than you would realize. And of course, trading as well. After that, we have obsidian. And again, I'm gonna say this a lot throughout this video, but this is also subject to change. This, I don't know why, is kind of a bit of a fluke, because I tried to make an obsidian texture some time ago, and I just ended up accidentally making something that I really liked. And it's been here for a while now. So even though I would usually have 8 variants and maybe like a color map or CTM or a custom model or something special about all of the aspects of Caelesti, this is just the texture that I made and just quite liked straight away. So it's just been here for a while now. And you will obviously see obsidian quite often when you build things like portals and when you go to the end. So it does come into play quite a bit. But again, ideally, in the future, this would also receive some upgrades, namely 8 variants would be really ideal for obsidian. I've actually tried. I've attempted to make 7 more variants of this texture in the past that all tile nicely and have the same sort of visual appeal to them. And it's not an easy task, you know? It's not an easy task at all. But when I look at this, I can immediately notice patterns which show up in the texture, which you can see across a large space. So like right here, if you like, that's like a mouth, and these are the eyes. Like you see that? So you got eye, mouth. And then that exact texture shows up in the corner of every single block, and that bothers me because it would bother me that there's a face here because pareidolia is quite annoying when it comes to pixel art. But what bothers me more is the fact that I can look at this and I can see that texture repeating across all the blocks, and if you just move your eyes across it, you can see them, right? So having 8 variants is how you avoid things like that. You avoid the brain's natural ability to recognize patterns and realize, oh wait, yeah, these are actually just like cubes that have all been placed down. You know, that's what I'm trying to avoid with every aspect of Caelesti. And snow is probably an alright example of this, actually, because snow does not have that problem. First of all, snow is not very contrasty. it's very bright. It's very pale. I think snow has 3 colors. It does, yeah. It has 3 different shades of basically like the brightest blue you can possibly imagine. And it looks pretty good, in my opinion. That there are like 4 variants of the snow texture, I believe, maybe 8. I'm not entirely sure. But you can see here that there are certain patterns across each of these snow blocks that are varied. It isn't just the same one pattern repeating over and over again, which is what I like to see. You know, this is what I try and aim for, because even though it all looks like snow, your brain isn't able to naturally notice where the blocks individually start and end. And that is like the main priority of Caelesti. I want to trick your brain into forgetting that this is a bunch of cubes and thinking of it as one giant dynamic snow surface. That's the whole point. So this like feature right here was much easier to do because in reality it's just a bunch of diagonal lines. But this exact feature is something that I would like to add to everything in Caelesti. There are 8 grass block textures. There are 8 snow textures, I think. There are more variants down the line. But yeah, I would like to add that sort of thing for everything in Caelesti, ideally. And this snow texture is applied to snow layers as well. It's just the same snow texture on the side, which builds up slowly. You can see here a good example of that is, you know, this is like a nearly a full block of snow, and this is an actual block of snow. And yeah, they just have the same texture on either side, which is chill. Next up, we have entities, not to be confused with custom entity models from Optifine or ETF with the EMF extension. These are just the vanilla entities. These are things that use the vanilla entity system with no custom models, no custom animations, just custom textures. First off, the Elytra, which is technically an entity. It's just a custom Elytra. I think it looks pretty good. There isn't really much to say about it, to be honest. I don't know. I just designed a custom Elytra one day. I think it looks pretty nice. It has a bit of a custom shape for the bottom of the Elytra there, where it's kind of weirdly wide. This could probably use a custom entity model at some point in the future. I believe that at the point that I made this, that wouldn't have been possible. But it is now possible, and probably with quite a little bit of animation potential as well. I've already had an idea for what to do with these differently in the future. I'm a big ideas man, right? Okay, I like a lot of big ideas, and to put all of those ideas into practice before the sun explodes is the real challenge, right? So my brand new idea for what to do with the Elytra would be to have it be kind of like a real insect's carapace and wing combo, where you have this texture that you see right here would be the carapace, which would open when you fly, but then whilst you're flying and moving through the air, you would have like a pair of wings underneath the carapace, which flutter. You know, maybe I'm describing that terribly. There's a lot of people who like insects on this channel, and arachnids, which I know are two different things. Thank you. I know they're different things. So yeah, maybe someone can give me the right language to describe what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think that's a pretty cool idea, right? Like you'd have like animated wings underneath these, what are essentially like shields that go on top of those things, right? So I've already got ideas of what to do differently with the Elytra in the future. It's just not for a while yet, because it's me, and that's how it goes. We also have a custom texture for the beacon beam, which is quite simple. I'm not actually entirely sure this is pixel... No, it's not pixel consistent at all. No. I mean, it's better than vanilla, right? It's not as high definition as vanilla's beacon beam, but it probably could do with some adjustment. I believe it's half the size of the vanilla beacon beam, but it actually needs to be halved again in order to be pixel consistent. But the beacon is something that I plan on doing more on in the future. You can see here, it's got some pretty neat features. You've got like blaze rods, in inverted commas, on the side here, which are animated and like flowing energy from, I don't know, the ground into the beacon. The beacon actually has quite an interesting 3D model. You can see that those rods kind of act like pins, and the idea is that those pins are plugged into the block beneath it, which gives the material pyramid some sort of a use in the beacon. We're not talking about the beacon model right now, we're talking about the beacon beam. But I might have actually forgotten to put the beacon block on this list. So maybe we are just talking about the beacon right now. But yeah, so the beacon beam's a little bit different. It's just a different texture. Nothing too special about this one. Oh, and I really needed to sneeze, so... Okay. So yeah, so ideas for the beacon beam in the future. I would love for this to have an animation, or just like some variants across every individual beacon beam part. That would be pretty cool. Right now it just looks kind of repetitive, like it's moving upwards. Like you can just see the same texture repeating again and again within the beacon beam. That's the kind of thing I want to avoid in Caelesti, but there is technically a beacon beam in Caelesti, so it's worth mentioning, I guess. Last but not least, for the vanilla entities, we have the books, specifically the enchantment table book and the lectern book. These are actually kind of simple. There was a previous version of the book at the very end of Skur, which had like animated blue glyphs appear in the pages that would like fade into the paper. I thought that was such a sick idea. You can go back and find that for yourself if you're interested. It's not in Caelesti, it's in Skur. Skur has some banger concepts. Like, if you're really interested in pack development and you're just here for the conceptual stuff, not the art style, go watch the Skur videos, because there's quite a lot of stuff in Skur that was pretty sick. But yeah, so the book is custom. It uses a similar texture system to the actual books that I have in my pack. Books have a custom item texture, with the plan being to use their like now square appearance for easier visual enchantments. Who knows how long that will take. But yeah, so they use a similar texture system for the book's sleeve, and also the pages here as well. Is that right? Sleeve? Book? No, not bookcase. It's like a bookshelf. The part of the book on the outside, I don't know, the book cover, the book sleeve, I think those are correct. I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with book anatomy, I hope you'll forgive me. But yeah, so these use a custom texture, but the vanilla entity. So it is worth mentioning that the book in Caelesti looks a bit different. If you're wondering how I've structured this list, the only way I could really think of doing it was to just go through the individual subfolders of the pack, like starting from the textures folder. So that was the block folder and the entity folder, and now we have the environment folder. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the celestial bodies of Caelesti. When I was laying this out, that beacon beam wasn't there, and now it's kind of in the way. Never mind. But yeah, we have the sun texture. Hurrah! The sun is a bit of a weird one for me because I kind of want to revert back to the HD sun without reverting back to the HD moon. Now, I'm sure everyone watching this knows what I'm on about. The celestial bodies of Caelesti have been in a bit of a weird spot now for a few updates. In version 0.23, I added a really high definition sun texture, which was like super HD compared to the rest of the pack. And it looked great. I really liked it. I thought it looked awesome. No one complained, and it was in the pack, and that was that. And then in update 47, I attempted making a high-definition moon to match it, and it was so bad that I ended up introducing Respiracopt support for Caelesti. So, yeah. Let me just explain what I mean. So, if you go into the Resource Packs menu, you will see Caelesti Update 47, built using FO, a pack by Scalibur. And on this little subscreen here, we have the Respiracopt's options. So the first of these options is Celestial Variants, which dictates the sun and moon style. Right now you can have vanilla or realistic. The default is vanilla, which gives these textures not like a low definition appearance, but something which is more at home with the rest of the vanilla style. And of course you have the realistic appearance, which is just like super HD for both the sun and the moon. So I'm going to enable that just now so we can see both of those, and then I'll revert it so we can have a look at the other options we have. So here is the HD sun. In my opinion, that looks great. I have no complaints with that. I think it looks beautiful. It's a sphere. Like, you look at that, and it looks like a sphere. It looks like it's so hot that it's just completely white, and it sort of, like, blurs in with the sky color itself, which also looks really nice during a sunset and a sunrise. If I go to... What am I going to do? Like 23,640. There we go. So that's the sunrise. You can see there the sunrise color map, which makes the sky very yellow in like what's that? Like a lozenge shape around the horizon. That like yellow color bleeds into the sun quite nicely, and it looks pretty interesting. And the same thing happens as well when you have a sunset. So time set. There we go. So yeah, the sunset color, which is very orange, also bleeds into the sun, which looks pretty sweet. I really like this texture. I think it looks really good. The same cannot be said for the moon, because, well, with the HD sun now being in the pack, I was tempted to add a HD moon, which, yeah, people don't like this texture, which is fine. I'm starting to dislike it more and more myself, actually, now, because I think the reason why the HD sun works so well is because of how simple the texture is. It's just a white circle with a haze, and that's it. It's so simple, and it doesn't really stand out as like glaringly, obviously mismatched with the rest of the project. But the more you look at this moon, the worse it looks. I don't know. I mean, it's got a limited color palette. It has a bit of a haze around it, so it doesn't look so out of place, like just pasted against the night sky, I guess. But also the edge of the moon especially just looks a bit weird, because it's just such a harsh cut-off between it and the background. The response to this moon is, as I said, the reason why Respiracopt support was added in the first place, because I really liked the HD sun, but people didn't like the HD moon. And as I said, I myself, I'm now not so good with the HD moon either. I'm not really a massive fan. I mean, it works well. Like I have like phases for it, you see? We have like a dark side of the moon and a Terminator, which has a glow that shouldn't be there. I think I'm going to remove it. I think I'm going to remove it, guys. What do we do? What do we do? I kind of want to just keep the HD sun and then revert to the like low-res moon that I've... Look at that. Looks terrible. That looks awful. What was I thinking? What was I thinking? Never mind. We have lots of bad features in Caelesti that get removed. That's fine. That's why this video is getting made, frankly. But yes, if I go into Respiracopt and re-enable the vanilla moon, we now have what many people have hailed as the best moon texture they've ever seen. So, complete flip side, and I actually agree with you. I think this looks awesome. I've gone from an 8x8 moon in vanilla Minecraft, which means that the moon is a quarter of the size of a block texture, if we're going off of pixel consistency standards. And now the moon is actually a 32 by 32 texture, which means that realistically it's about that big. So yeah, I don't know. Don't get too bogged down with pixel consistency, as I have done. You will go nuts. So don't do it. But I really like this moon texture. It looks good. And once again, we have phases. The Terminator on the moon phases of the low resolution moon looks so much better. And depending on whether the moon is waning or waxing, you actually get like a slight bias towards one side of the moon. So if I go all the way around here, we've got like a crescent and then a new moon and then waxing. And then we get to this point right there. Then you see we've got like a different shape for the moon. So even if you aren't really keeping track of the time, you can still look up at a half moon like this and kind of get a feel for which side of the phases that you're on, because they're a little bit different. So I think that looks pretty good. But yeah, so new moon in the pack looks awesome in my opinion. I'm probably I keep talking about this, but I already think I know what I'm gonna do, right? I think what we're gonna do is keep this moon in because it looks great. Maybe add like a square and a cube and another super secret variant of the moon texture as well. But then keep the HD sun, because I gotta say, I really gotta say, I don't like this. I don't like it. It's so pixelated on the side. It just looks like pixels. And even the overall shape of it doesn't look as good, because it's not a sphere, the haze. It's more of like a rounded square. You see that? I don't know how that happened. It's the same texture reduced in size, but it just doesn't look as good. I don't know what it is. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you think I should do that. But most likely what will happen is, in update 48, I'm probably going to have it be that we have the low-res moon be the default and the high-res sun be the default. Even though they're mismatched, I don't mind. I just prefer the vibe of each of those respective styles. So that's probably what I'm going to do. Next up for weather effects, we have rain and snow. I'll go over the rain first of all. So rain has a slightly custom texture. I believe it's just a slightly different color, and maybe that's it. It's hard to show off the rain texture because it's just moving so much. Did you guys know how this is rendered, by the way? It's kind of wild. Like, it's just a bunch of panes all placed around the player in circles, and they just cull the one that's at your direct location. So you can literally see by the color of the beacon beams there, like, the rain is not being rendered where I myself am stood. But all around me, it's being rendered as like panes that are just facing me. So it's pretty interesting, I guess. It's actually more obvious with the snow, now I think about it, because you can kind of see the individual panes that the snow is moving across. You can see where it cuts off. Like you can see there, if I just zoom in on this particular part, you can see the snowflakes sliding in and out of existence, which looks kind of weird. But yeah, the snow is a bit more interesting. The snow is, once again, a really high-res texture. Pixel consistency enthusiasts seethe, I guess. But yeah, I thought it would be nice to have these like more high-definition snowflakes in the pack. They look pretty cute. I mean, it's something that you would barely ever really even notice, because if you're just running around in the snow, it just looks like snow. But if you actually stop and move slowly and zoom in on these, you would see that there are actually quite a number of unique little shapes of snowflakes. Unfortunately, as much as I love variety, I can't think of a good way of adding like infinite variants of snowflakes, because there's that idea that, you know, every snowflake is unique, right? I don't know how to do that, but there's a few. There's a few different snowflake variants. Maybe you can spot them all. Maybe you can collect them all, give them a name tag, take them home to your base, you know? Anywho, enough with the weather, because people don't usually like weather anyway. There we go. Caelesti also has a custom font, which you can see here. I've got both a light and dark theme for you to look at. I really don't have much to say about this font. I can probably talk about one thing in a second, but essentially all this font is just me attempting to make a nicer looking font for the game in a style which I like. That's kind of it, really. The lower cases use as few curves as possible. You'll see everywhere where there would be a curve, like the top of the F, the bottom of the T, the A, the B, the D, like all of the places where you would have a curve do not have a curve. And then it starts to get a little bit inconsistent with specifically K, V, X, and Z, because you have these like awkward diagonals and not even 45-degree diagonals, which I've attempted to do justice as best I possibly can. That looks really dumb. Now I'm looking at it more, because look at that. It doesn't fit the rest of the V. I can't really think of a good way of doing fonts in this game, frankly. The uppercase letters have a lot more detail. You can see that the B is like curved, as is the D there, to make it look more like the letter it's representing. And you still have a similar issue with the weird slopes of the V, and the X just looks like... it looks so high definition compared to every other letter, but how do you do an X justice in this style? I mean, look how much the Y... I kind of got the Y looking all right, I guess, but it's still not ideal. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this font, but realistically, I like practically all of the font. It's just those particular 4 letters which just don't work too well. But again, how do you improve them in this style? You know, if anyone can tell me, if anyone can give me a good idea of how to do that, that would be great. But diagonal lines just do not work very well with this style. I could try and come up with something more abstract, but for something like the V, how do you do that? I don't know. I can't think of a good way of doing it. Maybe we could make this insanely high definition to imitate slanted straight lines, but that just seems like... I mean, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Then again, I've done that before. We'll look at the Rails soon. Next up, we have some changes to GUI. Every GUI in Caelesti has a squared theme, along with this like dark theme as well. All of the inventory text, such as this like building blocks, colored blocks, natural blocks, they've all been changed to have like a white color code before them so that they stand out more against the dark background. Me personally, I much prefer dark theme with white text. I just always have. I think it just looks so much better. There's this like factoid that, you know, computer screens are typically white because paper was white, but in reality, illuminating less pixels is just better, right? In every way. So always having white text on a dark theme just works better, and you'll see that that's a theme across everything in Caelesti. I think it looks much, much nicer. If any of you would like a light theme inventory as like a Respec Ops toggle, then do let me know. But me personally, I don't see a reason to add it because this looks great, right? So, I don't know, let me know. A common theme across each of these inventories, though, is that you will see there's like a dark insinuation of a tool that you would be using in this inventory. So where you usually have the texture of this hammer in the anvil, and I believe also this smithing table as well. Yeah, it's just like a blacked out texture instead, which just sort of implies the existence of that tool being there. The beacon is a little bit more unique because you have this graphic that sort of displays what the beacon should actually look like. And yeah, I don't know, I kind of like this feature. It's kind of nice. It also changes based on how big the beacon is that you're looking at. Yeah, if we go over and just look at this one real quick. I'm so unprepared once again. But you can see with this beacon right here, the first 2 stages are actually highlighted to indicate that you have successfully built the beacon. Yeah, just a neat little GUI feature, I guess. There's absolutely no indication whatsoever of what you have to do with a beacon block within vanilla Minecraft. There's just nothing. If you crafted a beacon, you know, you killed the Wither, arguably the most difficult boss in the game, and then you craft a beacon for the first time, and then you're just like, what do I do with it? It's good that we have like the Minecraft wiki and YouTube and, you know, popular community knowledge and all that, but like just this on its own, what do you do with it, you know? So being able to open it and see just a hint of what this thing is actually for, even because this is just like sat on a stack of iron blocks, I guess, because iron is typically what people build beacons out of, I guess, and maybe like emerald as well. I feel like emerald and iron are the easiest ones to get. But yeah, just the insinuation of what you actually do with this thing, I think, is pretty good. And that feature of the different levels, like highlighting as you successfully build them, is just pretty nice. Again, it's a good use of GUI features, in my opinion. I should have really put the blast furnace, and smoker together, but I didn't. So we're gonna see them a bit differently. The blast furnace has a blast texture where the fire would usually be. Just a neat way of making each of the different smelting workstations a bit more unique. You can see that texture is just going down as you'd expect there. I think it looks pretty nice. I think it looks pretty good. All of the crafting tables or workstations, or whatever you want to call them, which can have recipe books, also have the book texture, which opens, as you can see there, when you hover over it, and then you get this custom crafting screen, which is also custom. Same like dark and squared design that I have across each of these. I might as well do these all now, actually. So the furnace has the usual flames texture. This is custom. It's just a little bit brighter, a little bit more yellow and orange rather than the vanilla, very red and very crunchy fire texture that you have. And the smoker also has a custom texture, which is, you guessed it, smoke. Which just, because it's being smoky, I guess. So yeah, it's pretty good. Just a bit of unique thing for each of those 3 stations that usually are quite similar, and all usually just share this one same texture, which in my mind is quite dull. Have unique ones. It's more fun, We also have the brewing stand. The brewing stand is one of the more interesting GUI textures because it's animated. You can see that this spiraling feature on the side where the blaze powder is fed into the brewing stand is animated. The implication there is that the kind of fluid is moving down that tube to fill in this area right here. This is animated using Animatica nowadays, I want to say. Optifine had an old feature called Anim, which allowed you to animate pretty much anything in the game. It allowed you to animate entity textures, GUI, everything that you couldn't usually animate in vanilla. Anim allowed you to animate properly, and that mod, the modern Fabric mod version of that is called Animatica. Although I heard recently that Animatica has not been updating recently, so perhaps going forward this isn't going to work anymore, but I'm not really sure. It is working for now, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, we also have the bleh. Am I going to cut that? Maybe not. I don't know. I do that a lot when I'm recording, I'll start a sentence and it's like my brain is going faster than my mouth can manage, so I just go and the blah 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 there, and then I just have to cut and start again. It happens more often than you could possibly know. But yeah, so the cartography table, this one's quite fun. It's just the cartography table with a map texture, and that's about it. It always really bothered me with the cartography table how the preview of the map works here, but as soon as you want to expand the map, what it shows you makes no sense, because this implies that what you're going to get is this smooth area around the edge where you'll then be able to expand this map. In reality, you get something completely different, because of the way that maps work. So why not have the preview be more accurate so you can actually see what you're getting? Was there a technical limitation there? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it could be done, but I don't know. So yeah, but it's dark theme, it's square, you already know. Crafting table, it's dark theme, it's square, you already know. Dispenser, it's the same. There's really not much to be said about these. They all have the same theming and the same texture style. The enchanting table is a little bit different. We'll head over here and give that a look. So each part of the enchanting table has a unique texture here for, I guess, the level of enchantment that you're going to be getting. These are supposed to be animated with Animatica, but for whatever reason they don't work, and I don't quite understand why. Because as we saw before, the Animatica is still working for the brewing stand. So why it's not working for the enchanting table, I really don't know. But each of these are supposed to be animated, spiraling green textures, I believe. I don't know why they're not working, but they're not. Maybe they will be again at some point in the future, but for now, they be broken, unfortunately. We also have the grindstone, which I remember the name of. This has just a really simple insinuation of what the grindstone looks like head-on inside the texture. Again, it's following that same trend we have of the abstract insinuation of whatever the table is included in there. We also have the item hopper, simple enough. We have the loom, which is actually the loom does have some features. Let me get a banner and some dye, and we'll see what we can do here. So the banner, the loom has different icons here, as you can see. You can select these and they sort of push in. These use a similar texture system to the menu buttons. It's just the same thing again. As I mentioned at the very start of the video, as someone who's done a lot of game development, in my mind, GUI appearance is really not that important. It was more important for me to just make this dark theme and put my own spin on it, which was to make it more square rather than the rounded appearance that we have in vanilla. But yeah, it's a very simple system. It just uses dark theme buttons and a scroll wheel here, and you get yourself a banner, a very beautiful and very expertly made banner right there. Yeah, we have the smithing table, which has the same blacked out hammer texture. We've already looked at the smoker, and we have the stone cutter. The stone cutter is a little bit more unique. because you have this custom like hover over texture for each of the options you have, I guess. That doesn't have any options. That was smart. But yeah, the scroll wheel does also activate sometimes. What has a lot of options? I don't actually know. Does cobblestone have a lot of options? No. I don't know what has a lot of options in the stone cutter. Wait. Deep slate? You can't stone cut deep slate? What? Can you stone cut, like, cobble to deep slate? Oh, you can. And it has tons of options. Okay. Oh, I could talk about the inconsistencies of Minecraft all day. Why is it that you make deep slate bricks, which look quite smooth, out of the cobbled deep slate variant, but you make stone bricks, which look quite smooth, out of the smooth stone variant? Like, was that an oversight? Was that intentional? Will we ever know? Will it ever get changed? Probably not. I don't know. This is why I have a data pack, which hasn't been updated in God knows how long, but maybe I'll update it soon, actually. Artibus version, what would it be, like 0.9 now, I think? Yeah, I don't know. The inconsistencies of recipes in this game are mind-boggling. Mojank. Next up, we have the chest models. I'm just kidding. We'll get to those later on. What we actually have are the item textures of Caelesti, and there are not many item textures in Caelesti. They're actually one of the most incomplete aspects of the pack. But you can see here all of the things that I have already textured. I could talk about all of these individually, but I think it's easier for me to just sort of clarify where I'm at with my pixel art skills right now. So I've never really been shy about, stating that I'm not a pixel artist. I am a technical artist. I'm a developer. Well, a developer is a vague term. I guess you could use developer to describe anything. But I'm more of a pack developer than a pixel artist, which is why I have so much of a focus on things like conceptual design and modded features and like weird block state properties and things like that. So when it comes to actually designing just plain and simple item textures, I am not very good at it, and I don't have much experience. I am planning on trying to gain some more pixel art experience at some point very soon. I have a video in the works right now, actually, where I'm taking some existing features of Caelesti, or some newly made ones, and then learning a couple of more pixel art skills from a book that I found online, and then presenting the new things at the end that I've made after that learning process. So at some point in the future, all of these will probably change. It's just a case of when and who. If I bring someone in to do it for me, for example, or if I teach myself a decent number of skills. But you can see here, there's a basic theme that you can probably pick up on. One thing that I do like about these item textures is that they are at least consistent. There are a couple of things here that I'm not too happy with. For example, the leather texture. The leather texture I'm not too happy with. It looks a bit mushy. I feel like it could probably do with a darker outline or just maybe more contrast in general. But the same could be said for all of these, right? Things like the arrow, I do really like, and I doubt that would ever change. Same thing goes for the tools and weapons, which we're actually going to talk about separately in just a minute. But yeah, you can see some things in here like the Amethyst shard and the nether quartz. They're using a very simple shape and shading style, which does work for some items, but a lot of the items in the game simply wouldn't work for those sorts of things. So yeah, I think these are all right. They could probably use some improvements across the board, but there you go. You can see all the item textures of Caelesti. Next up, we have the tools and weapons that have already been textured. Tools and weapons are one of the few areas of texture art where I actually feel like I do all right. I do an okay job. The new trident, which we released in the most recent update, is really good. I do really like that, as well as the new swords as well, like especially the diamond sword. The diamond sword is without a doubt my favorite weapon or tool in the pack right now. But they're all pretty good across the board, right? I mean, the wooden tools look quite basic. The stone tools also, again, look quite crude. And all of these have been tied together with bits of string, which I think is a little bit inventive as well. Usually, I wouldn't like to introduce new materials that aren't involved in the crafting recipe. But for these in particular, I think it just makes them more visually interesting. So I'm fine with kind of breaking my own rules a little bit there. But when you get to things like the iron and the diamond tools, they look a lot more sturdy. They look a lot more durable. And the diamond tools especially have some sort of unique flair. So the shovel has like an extra wide handle, which would imply that it's just more user-friendly. The axe has like a lumpy part at the bottom of the tool rod, which would make it easier to hold, I guess. And the diamond hoe is just a scythe. It just looks like a scythe, right? Because that's kind of cool. The gold sword is pretty interesting. It's a cutlass. I really like the curved crossguard on the cutlass. I think it looks really good, but I think the blade of the cutlass probably will need to get changed at some point in the future, and I have a plan for that actually in an upcoming video as well. But yeah, so some pretty interesting things across the board. If you watched the most recent update video, then you already know that a lot of these swords have enlarged item textures, which fully reveal themselves when you pick them up, and like a preview thumbnail when you place them back down again. Same for the trident as well. I think these are looking pretty good across the board. And I've just realized I completely forgot to put the bow in here, so I'm going to get the bow out now, actually, because the bow is also done. So the bow is really good. I do actually really like the bow. It also has a custom number of pulling frames as well, which is unique for the bow. Usually in vanilla Minecraft, the bow has, I believe, 3 pulling frames. In Caelesti, it has 5, I believe, just to make the animation of it being pulled a little bit more fancy, a little bit more involved, and a little bit faster as well. And I think it looks pretty good, especially when pulled back like that. The limbs of the bow are sort of inspired by a recurve bow, I want to say. Although that's probably not entirely accurate. I'm not much of an archer anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, the bow's looking pretty good. Next up, we have map icons. There isn't really much to say about the map icons. It is just worth noting that there are custom map icons for the banners that you can right-click in world to make little waypoints, and also for the icons that represent where the map or the player themselves is actually stood. Can I get that? Yeah, so there's a custom icon for me there as well. It would be much better to turn view bobbing off for maps. Imagine if you could turn view bobbing off for specific items. That would be cool. Because I don't like the appearance of me running through the world with with a tool and it just gliding. I think that looks really dumb. But with maps, it would be especially helpful, because that just doesn't look very good, does it? But yeah, not much to say about maps. They have custom icons. There used to be custom map colors in Caelesti using the Optifine color.properties method, but I'm not sure that even works anymore, or if that's even present in the pack at this point, so it's not even really worth mentioning. But there are custom map icons in the pack, so that's why the map is here. Moving on, we have the enchantment glint. Anything in the pack which is enchanted currently has this custom pulsating enchantment texture. This consists primarily of purples and blues and a little bit of red in there as well. It's a really simple, just, set of gradients all piled on top of each other to make this kind of nice enchantment glint. And I think that this is an improvement on the vanilla enchantment glint personally. I prefer the way that this looks. But the long-term goal with enchantments would be to do visual enchantments, which I've already talked about quite a bit with the spears especially. But I want to start doing these for all the weapons across the board. So the swords will be quite interesting to design, and also the books as well. The reason why the books are placed like this in the inventory with this kind of like vertical positioning is actually to make visual enchantments more easy to achieve in the future. I've kind of been prepping for this visual enchantment update for like years now at this point. But it's a big job, so I guess I'm just going to keep putting it off. But yeah, so the enchantment glint can be applied to armor as well. So whenever you've got enchanted armor, it will also have a slight glint. It's extremely subtle compared to the vanilla glint, which I think is a good thing. I actually prefer this way of doing it, to the point where if I do visual enchantments, I might just leave this really subtle glint on there anyway, just because it looks good on its own. It's a lot less impactful than the vanilla enchantment glint, so I think it looks pretty good. It also looks pretty good on the elytra as well, because the elytra has a very neutral texture, right? So it complements that quite nicely. While we're here in the GUI folder, it's also worth noting that the carved pumpkin does have a custom texture as well. So whenever you hold a pumpkin, you'll get this kind of like odd-looking texture on your screen, which is really annoying because it really obscures the center of the screen, but you can still see a decent amount out of the eye sockets. So you can see, like, if I look through the eye sockets there, I can see quite a lot of my game, as opposed to the vanilla version, which just has like really small amounts of space to look through. The eyes on the pumpkin texture are like right up against your face, right? So you should, in theory, be able to see a decent amount out of the pumpkin. It just should be obscured right in the center. I mean, by rights, if you were wearing this correctly, your vision would be like barely obstructed at all. But you want to have some sort of visual feedback to the player that you are currently wearing a pumpkin. You can see the design around this is kind of like, it's a bit mixely. I don't really know how best to describe it. But what I was going for here was to kind of imply a level of depth to the pumpkin, and also the different levels of opacity are to imply that your eyes are sort of doing that thing where, they're combining together what they can see to make one image. So the whole idea of the GUI of the pumpkin texture is kind of just to imply that you're actually wearing a pumpkin. I don't know how best to explain. I think this is good. I think this works quite well. But yeah, I mean, in theory, I really should change the shape of this to match the item version of the pumpkin, because the item version will always use this pumpkin texture, even though pumpkins do have random textures. So I would consider changing it to actually match the shape of those eyes in the future. But for now, it works fine. So yeah, pumpkin. Before we get into the custom folder and all of the more interesting features of Caelesti, the last thing we're going to talk about is particles. And there are currently only 3 custom particles in Caelesti, or I guess a lot more than 3 if you count the enchantment glyphs as individual particle effects instead of like the one sheet that they come on, which isn't a sheet anymore because they separated them all. Never mind, Caelesti has loads of particles. I'm so old. So yeah, the enchantment glyphs that you see here are actually based off of, they're not based off of, they're just ripped. They're just fully ripped from the Shulker slate technology from Breath of the Wild. Some of you who've been here for quite some time will know I'm a big Zelda fanboy. I love Zelda. I think it's a brilliant game series. I'm actually currently playing through Ocarina of Time, just, playing it again for the first time in like a decade, and it's still a great game. If you haven't played it, please do play it. But yeah, so enchantment glyphs, enchantment glyphs, they look like this. They are just straight up stolen from the Shulker technology, which is a really happy coincidence because the Shulker technology uses like a fake A to Z alphabet and just has a rune that represents each one of those. The Q is a question mark. You might see it fly in here occasionally, which I think is quite fun. But of course, the enchantment table language in Minecraft also uses a fake A to Z alphabet. So you can literally just translate them one-to-one and just move, the Shulker runes to the enchantment table, and that's what I did. So yeah, the whole point of this was just because of the fact that it's a fun coincidence that both styles use the same system and could be translated directly to each other. Maybe you could mod Breath of the Wild and put the Minecraft enchantment table language into it. That would be interesting. There are also custom particle effects for the torch and the soul torch as well, and these do also apply to the mob spawner and the furnace as well, I believe. The whole idea behind these is actually just to experiment with the idea of expanding the number of particle effect textures that a particle could use. In vanilla Minecraft, the torch only uses a single flame particle texture, and I've made like a custom system. I don't know entirely how it works. I've forgotten. It was that long ago. But they basically have like a set of particle textures instead of just the one. And as you can probably see here from just looking at the particle effects, there are 4 textures currently which will be used randomly in place of the vanilla single particle that you have for torches and soul torches. And I do also have a long-term goal to convert all of the soul-based materials in Minecraft to this like lilac color. I don't know why, but for me personally, this just fits the whole theme of soul a lot better. I was inspired by chalk of Overgrowth, and I say of Overgrowth, of Avalon now is the pack he's currently making. But yeah, so Chalk decided to change all of the soul-related items in Overgrowth to have a green color instead of the blue color from vanilla, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. You could just change that. There's nothing stopping you from changing that, so I decided to do something very similar, and we see that here we have like a lilac texture for the torch itself, and also lilac recolors of the flame particle as well, and I think they look pretty good. Long-term goal, I would eventually want to change all of the soul-based things to have this lilac hue. Currently, the soul fire is just the vanilla blue because I don't want to do animated textures, guys. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But yeah, one day, eventually, trademark. I will get around to it. But yeah, custom particles. Wahoo! We got all the boring shit out the way, and now we're on to the fun shit. Yeah! This video is nearly an hour long already, so if you're still here, if you're still watching, cheers, mate. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying the video. If you're enjoying this style of like devlog, where I just walk and talk through a bunch of shit, then you might want to go back and watch the older Caelesti videos. Not the very oldest ones, because I'm still a bit squeaky, but some of them are pretty good. They're all in this style, where I just talk in detail about all of the things that I've done, as opposed to the recent devlog style video that I've been doing a lot more of. So if you like this sort of a format, then you might want to go back and watch all of those. There is a playlist on my channel which you can find, which is just on the homepage, I believe. It's called Caelesti Chronological. So yeah, that might be of interest to you. But yeah, moving on, we have the Amethyst block texture. This one is an experimentation into animation, as you may have seen while I've been just kind of standing here for the last couple of seconds. There are a good number of variants of the Amethyst block that all have different animations with just the individual, I guess, like crystals just glinting, which really doesn't make any sense because there's no light source that would be making this happen, but it just looks nice, right? So that's kind of the only logic behind it. There are a good number of variants, all with different animation timing variants as well, so it looks very random, very dynamic, which is always what we're going for in this pack. But the actual base texture itself doesn't have any randomization. It's just one texture. It's the animation on top of it that has variance. And typically, when you find Amethyst geodes, you don't find them in a situation where you have like one flat area of the texture. Very often it's kind of like these sloped and curved walls, so it doesn't really look as bad. But yeah, and we also have custom textures for the sprouting geode as well. There's like this kind of darker area in the center where the crystal is coming out of, and of course the crystal itself. Now, the crystal itself is kind of interesting. It actually has a very slight bit of translucency to it, as you can see here. And in the very old days of the pack, when I first added this to the pack, things like emissive worked really well with translucency because you could set the emissive texture to be an extremely translucent texture, and it would mean that the emissive was also as bright as the texture is translucent. So if it was at 255 opacity, or so just opaque, then it would be full brightness, whereas if it was at 25 opacity, it would be at 10% brightness, and that used to work really well. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that doesn't work anymore, so even though the emissive textures are at a very low transparency, and you can see here they even cut off entirely towards the bottom there, they just render at full brightness now, which I don't know when that changed. Maybe it's just not possible anymore. Maybe the mod that adds Optifine's emissive feature just doesn't have that capability involved. But once again, these need to be changed because now they don't look very good. They look a bit dumb. But yeah, just one of the many, many features of Caelesti which have been broken by the crushing passage of time, I guess. And we have the beacon. I'm trying to find new ways of saying next up because I feel like I just keep saying next up over and over again. So here we have the beacon model. The beacon model is quite an interesting one. It uses my custom obsidian texture for the base there, and it has this really, really piss poor nether star thing at the top there, which is kind of based off of the nether star texture. It uses, it has yellow in the middle, so I guess that's it. That's the only real logic there. But there are also these like custom blaze rod features around the edge, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, beacons, hooray. Did we already talk about the beacon? We did already talk about the beacon, because I forgot that it was up here. We've already talked about the beacon again. There you go. Bones. Bones have CTM, which is a little bit whack, I guess. The top texture of bones do not have CTM, so you get this sort of grid-like pattern when they're placed like this, but the side texture of bones does have CTM, and the reasoning for this is because of how bones generate. Typically, they'll generate in this kind of a fashion where they're placed down kind of like logs, I guess, because they do have the same like XYZ placement rotation. If you check the block state there on the right side of the screen, yeah, axis. So we have axis X, that's axis Y, and that's axis Z. So they do have the same sort of rotational properties as logs do. But yeah, so these have CTM, which works well with the way that these are placed down in the world, I guess. So when they're placed down, you have like one connected section for the spine, and then you have connected sections for the ribs, which rotate around like that as well. So I think it just looks pretty good. It almost becomes like the bone structures that you find throughout the game, whether it be fossils, in swamps, or I don't know if fossils spawn anywhere else, maybe deserts as well. And of course, soul sand valleys, you will get this kind of unique structure-like system with the bones because they have CTM. So it felt like a really good opportunity to add some CTM to the pack. So bone CTM. And also, if bones spawn in swamps, they also are discolored as well. They're a bit more brown compared to the vanilla bones, as you can see there. The logic behind this was more so just to point out the fact that bones spawn more commonly in swamps, or again, I don't know if it's just more commonly or if they just spawn at all in swamps. But yeah, so they have like a slight discoloration there, simply because it's something where you could naturally find them in-game. Usually when it comes to features with variants like this, I try and piggyback off of Minecraft's built-in systems to think like, what will the player naturally run into? So for example, with the lily pads, the only two places in the game that the lily pads actually spawn are in swamps and mangrove swamps. And because that's two distinct environments they can spawn, you get two distinct versions of lily pads. There are other versions of lily pads that you can find, say if you go to like a savanna or a cold environment, but because those two are environments where you can naturally find them without having to pick them up and move them around, that's where they have custom features. As I said, I'm trying to piggyback off of how vanilla Minecraft does things itself. Okay, this makes complete sense now. Because the bow texture uses multiple animation frames, I decided to put it in the custom folder. So when I was looking through the item folder, there are chests there, you just can't see them. When I was looking through the item folder, the bow wasn't there, so it didn't come up. But the bow is in the custom folder. So we've already talked about the bow. So we'll talk about the chains instead. Chains do have a custom model and custom texture system, which I do quite like. Usually, when it comes to making models, I really don't like having this like 1x1 voxel type system that you see on the chains here. But for the chains, it's just perfect. So I couldn't deny being able to do this. The chains work together really nicely. There are quite a number of different variants of chains, but they always link up correctly when you get to the end and start of chains, like in between those two blocks there. They will always use a similar system to make sure they link up nicely, but the actual chain links in between those two endpoints are randomized. They're not using like a completely batshit random system like with some of my flowers, but there are just multiple variants of it, so a whole lot of chains will look a little bit different, as you see. Chains do also work horizontally in the way that you'd expect as well. The only thing that my chains don't really do that some other packs do is they don't link together like that. I know some people really like doing this sort of a thing, but I couldn't really think of a way of making that look good with the way that I've done my chains. Plus, I don't really think that's a really like a valid thing to have to cover, because chains can't do that in vanilla, so yeah, that's my only real logic to that, to be honest with you. But yeah, chains look pretty good. And chains also are designed to link up perfectly with lanterns as well. The top of lanterns actually use the exact chain model and texture system that we have over here. So when you link up lanterns to chains, like is kind of implied you would be able to do based on the lantern texture in vanilla, they do again link up together quite nicely. And once again, similar to the torch and the soul torch, lanterns have a more yellowy orange glow, and soul lanterns have this lilac glow as well. Now, given some of the enhanced tools that have been made available to us through things like Polytone, I do have a plan to upgrade the lanterns once again, and I am definitely stuck in a revamp loop. Holy shit. But yeah, imagine these lanterns with translucent windows and a flame particle in the middle using Polytone's custom particle system. I think that would look really nice, right? I think that would look really good. It would look really dumb when you get too far away from them because the particle would just stop being there. But when you were up close to it, it would look pretty good. Maybe we could have some sort of a system for changing out the texture or model based on how far away you are from it. That would be neat, but I have no idea if that's possible. So you will remain on the back burner for now, my friend. But yeah, lanterns do also have random rotations when they're placed down on the ground as well, just simply rotating around the one chain link that comes with your lantern. This is the debug stick. I think that's pretty fun, right? It's just, you know, it usually looks like a stick in vanilla because it's just a debug stick. But it actually allows you to... That's not going to do anything, is it? Wait. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. That looks so dumb. Oh, my God. Great. Can't you, like, rotate these around? No, because they don't have a rotation. It's just, are they connected or not? Why is it like the hitbox is changing? I guess they just do that. Yeah, I'm going to leave it like that. That looks great. That looks so cursed. What happened there? Why has that happened? Look how dumb that looks. It doesn't usually look like that if they're hanging, right? If we get like a rotated one. It does. Oh, that's broken. Why is that broken? Forget about that. We didn't see that. That didn't happen. Forget about that. But the debug stick is a red wrench. This is the same wrench texture that I designed for a really old resource pack back in the day, where I had the ludicrous idea of attempting to make textures for modded Minecraft. There are a huge number of mods that add a wrench, be it thermal energistics or applied... No, wait, I just combined two mods together there. I haven't played modded Minecraft in a while, okay? So we have thermal expansion, applied energistics, you have... I think create has a wrench, although it looks very different to this. You know, every mod... Every tech mod has a wrench of some kind. So I tried to make them all look consistent by giving them essentially this exact texture, but with a different color palette. And because I quite liked that texture, I thought, hey, well, I'll just bring that to vanilla and have it be the debug stick texture. So that looks pretty good. And yeah, I still think this looks pretty nice. It's just a red wrench. Don't mind me, I'm just going to add it to the changelog for the next update to fix this bug, because how has that happened? When did that happen? Dark Prismarine was hinted at earlier in this video when I was talking about the quartz tiles over here. Dark Prismarine was one of the earlier ventures into randomized block textures. Dark Prismarine has 16 variants. And I believe, yeah, they're not using a very modern randomization system, because you can see here they have the same texture on all faces, which is not something I would do in modern Caelesti. I would make sure to use a single pane 6 times and then randomize the weight of them so we have a different texture on each side. But this looks pretty good, I think. 16 variants of a block is very random. It's far too random, frankly. From previous testing in the past, I've realized that having 8 variants of a block will make it look exceedingly random. You do not need any more than 8, but any less than 8, and you can start to recognize a pattern. You can start to see similar textures appearing over and over again. But yeah, 16 variants for Dark Prismarine, just simply adding these like differently colored tiles. So we have the base, I want to say turquoise, but it's kind of a dark turquoise. And then we just have like a reddy brown tile and a more deep blue tile to go in there as well. And the placement of each of these tiles was also randomized. So I think what I did was I took like a random number generator, and I basically just let the random number generator decide which of the tiles was going to be different colored and which color it would then be. So it's just very random. It's just a good pursuit into randomness. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, they do look pretty good when paired with quartz tiles as well, because you go from this very random and very dark looking texture to a very clean and very consistent texture. So you can use these in conjunction for some pretty interesting builds, which we'll also see later in this video. Never mind, we'll see them right now because I was smart enough to place it down. So here is a pool of water, and you have dark prismarine and you have white quartz, and they look pretty good, right? It looks like a pool, I guess. I don't know. I really do wonder, has anyone using Caelesti like ever actually used these for anything? Because that would be fun to see if you have. Next up, I want to talk about dirt, and if the video view count is anything to go by, then this could be considered like a fan favorite feature of Caelesti, which is so cool to think, really, isn't it? But yeah, dirt is quite an interesting block in itself, even without all of the fancy stuff that we'll talk about in a moment. So all of the dirt blocks have a custom model, which has 3 different textures assigned to it. First of all, we have the top and bottom texture, which has this more flat looking appearance. And then we have the side textures, which have this more layered looking appearance. I said 3 because there are 3. The texture on this side is a unique dirt side texture, and the texture on this side is also a unique dirt side texture. So if you think of this as texture 0 and this as texture 1, then this is also texture 0 and this is also texture 1. And the thinking behind this is whichever direction you look at dirt from, you will always be seeing 3 different textures. So you won't see any sort of similarities when you're moving around the dirt, because that is something that I used to have with the old dirt system. You would see the same texture here and here, which looked quite repetitive, especially on corners of hills. So now dirt just looks really random and really dynamic from every single angle, which it should, because it's dirt. There's no man-made aspect to this. It should look very random and very natural. So I do like this system quite a bit. This system also extends to all of the dirt block variants, by which I mean like grass and path, mycelium and podzol, where the side textures share the same feature of having a texture on this face and this face, but then a unique one on the other sides. So I guess if I was describing this in a really literal way, the north and south facing textures are the same, and the east and west facing textures are the same. Obviously for the grass block, it's not, you can't really say that the top and bottom textures are the same because it's a different system. But for dirt, yeah, the top and bottom textures are the same texture. So there you go. But as you will all probably know, dirt has quite an interesting feature in that it actually has a color map which can be adapted to quite a number of biomes. So I'm going to go over here from left to right and we'll see each of these. So first of all, we have the plains dirt, which is just your regular sort of ready salted dirt, if you will, which I will. So this is just kind of a mid-brown color. And then we also have pale garden dirt, which is intentionally very desaturated, very dull, just simply to fit with the aesthetic of the pale garden even better. And then we have swamp dirt, which is very rich, very moist, very saturated. And then we have jungle dirt, which is even more so. It's just the same, like this is wet, this has lots of iron in it. That's kind of what the deal is for the jungle dirt. And then we have dry dirt variants from the Badlands and also the desert, where they're a lot more yellowed, they're a lot more dry. And then we have more variants as well. So over here we have tiger dirt, which is just a bit more brown, a bit darker. We also have snowy plains, where the dirt becomes once again very dull, very grey, just simply to fit up with the aesthetic of a snowy environment more. And then we have beach, which is more yellow because the turbulent water would be removing clay from the dirt, I'm told. So it becomes a lot more dull and desaturated. And then we also have mushroom fields dirt, which is pink, and that there really is no logic behind this. It just looks good with mycelium. That's it. Dirt also has a height color map feature as well as some CTM variants as well. So we'll see here, the deeper we go into a world, the dirt transitions from whichever color it would be at the surface. So in this case, with it being plains, it's just kind of the default brown dirt. The deeper you go, the dirt will start to get a bit more desaturated, and you'll even start to see a few little pebbles appearing in the dirt every now and then. And the deeper you get, the dirt gets more and more desaturated, and the pebbles get larger and more frequent as well, until you get to the very bottom of the world here. You can see here we're Y minus 48, so we're very deep down. It would be deep slate all around me at this point in time. Any dirt you find at this level is basically grey and is filled with rocks and pebbles, because there is no natural plant life in this environment which will be feeding the dirt nutrients to make it more brown, so it just becomes grey. Or so I'm told. There is like logic behind all of this, and I think it looks pretty good. It makes for a really interesting visual distinction between dirt at the surface and dirt underground, which again, going back to that thing I mentioned before about the bone blocks in the swamp biome, because this is a feature that you naturally run into when playing vanilla Minecraft, I'm trying to piggyback off of that and sort of build off of the systems that already exist within Minecraft, and I think that's really cool. I really like this feature a lot. Next up, I want to talk about the birch trees. These are, at this point, like one of my favorite features in Caelesti, really. The birch trees are iconic. They're basically orange. I love the idea of these being autumnal so much. When Mojang added falling leaves to the game, it didn't work with my birch trees automatically. These have been appearing in many videos recently, and I've had a good number of people comment saying, "Are you going to fix the birch leaves?" Yeah, I will eventually. Trademark. But yeah, so birch trees are quite interesting, and we'll talk more about the leaves in just a moment. But before we do, I want to talk about the logs themselves. So the birch logs have, once again, 8 variants, and they use a very similar system to the dirt, where you have the same texture on the front and... Oh, wait, no, they don't. They don't have that. Oh, I guess I was... Oh. There's no reason for them to be this random, but I guess I just wanted to make them this random. So I guess birch logs have a texture... they have a unique texture on every face. That's neat. I didn't even know I did that. I think maybe I developed these logs before the dirt, so I didn't realize that this was kind of like overkill at this point. But there's no reason not to, right? Because you might just see the same tree from different angles as you're walking past it every now and then. So I guess this is kind of neat. Is there much reason to keep that? I don't know. I'm going to leave it. I think it looks good. I think it looks pretty good. So yeah, birch logs look pretty good. The top texture is also kind of nice. I do actually like the way this texture looks quite a bit. It's just rings of a log. It's what you'd expect, right? The stripped log is also quite similar in that the stripped variant has these like same, I want to say depressions in the texture where these chunks would be. These have a name in the real world, I believe. And in the real world, they oftentimes look a lot more like eyes, but I kind of ditched that idea. I guess they sometimes look a bit like eyes, like that looks a bit like an eye, right? But not really. They're more just like lines. It's more of just a cartoony and squarified appearance for birch logs. But these are also completely consistent across the regular and stripped variants. So you can see here, if I strip these logs, they will retain the exact position of each of the individual, like, spots or eyes on the log, and that's a really simple thing to set up. It's an identical block states file and an identical set of textures for both the regular and stripped variants of blocks. And if you use the exact same weight for 2 different types of blocks, then they will appear the exact same way based on where they are placed in the world. So if you take one thing away from this video, take that away, because it's pretty neat, right? You can be consistent across multiple things if you just use the exact same random weights. So yeah. And now for the birch leaves. So birch leaves are kind of an interesting one. They do not have a grayscale texture. They actually have this kind of like orange and very vivid texture by default, and then they get a different color added to them depending on what biome they're in. This was a really simple idea just to make birch trees autumnal. I think it just made the birch forest itself look a lot more unique, a lot more visually interesting, and me personally, I just think they look really nice. But if you were to find birch trees in a different biome, so over here we have the plains birch, that yellow texture has a lot of green added on top of it to the point where it becomes kind of a normal looking birch tree, right? It's still a very different color to like the regular oak trees that you'll find around it. If I plant an oak tree beside it here, you'll see there is quite a big distinction between the colors of these trees. So yeah, they're still very different. You can definitely see the yellow undercoat of the birch leaves, right? But they just have a lot of green added on top of them to make them fit a lot more nicely in these sorts of biomes. At one point in the past, all of the birch trees in the world, regardless of what biome they were in, would have that same orange appearance, but I thought it would be more interesting to give them a bit of variety, given that birch trees spawn in so many environments. And there are, of course, environments that birch trees don't spawn in, and there are custom variants for those as well. So birch trees spawned in a swamp will have a very dull, dark brown appearance, almost like they're struggling to get by in this sort of an environment. I don't know how that makes any sense, because a swamp is, like, in theory, a really good environment for a tree to grow in, but they're brown. They look better in a swamp, I guess. There's always this, like, tug of war in my head between what looks good and what makes sense, and hitting the middle ground of those things, or just doing all of them at once. That's kind of one of my main keystones for Caelesti, pillars, I guess you could say. But yeah, so we have orange trees in birch forests, we have green trees in forests, we have brown ones if you bring them to swamps and plant them yourself. We also have yellowed ones which spawn in savanna biomes. They don't actually spawn in savanna biomes, do they? But I guess they can spawn at the edge of savanna biomes quite often. But yeah, again, if you take a birch tree to a savanna biome and plant it here, it will have this sort of an appearance instead. And finally, if you were to plant a birch tree in a cold biome, it actually has this kind of like minty green texture, which I think looks pretty nice. You can get a really good idea of what the tint is by seeing it on the actual grayscale leaf texture there. So yeah, birch trees look pretty good. I really like birch trees. They have a good amount of variety. They have different appearances based on where you choose to plant them or where you can find them naturally in the world. And that really is a feature that I love to have with color maps. You have fixed features which you can find in vanilla Minecraft by just exploring, and then you have extra kind of secret features that you can get by planting things in specific locations. I really like doing that sort of thing with color maps, and there'll be a lot more of that down the line as well, like a lot more of that. And we couldn't talk about birch logs without talking about birch planks. This is, as many things in Caelesti are, an unfinished feature, but it was a way of experimenting with a CTM system. So the way that birch planks work is they have like two large plank textures across the top, and then the side textures actually feed into that idea here. So if you look at the top of this texture, it looks like this feature right here is an individual plank, and the implication is that as you go down through the block's layers, the planks have been placed at different rotations for, I guess, structural integrity, and if you get to the very bottom of the birch log, then the texture is actually flipped around from the top, which again matches up with the way that the side texture works there. So you can see there's no divot there, and there's no divot on the bottom, but there's a divot on the bottom there, and there's a divot on the side there. Is divot the right word? I don't know. I hope so, but never mind. But yeah, the top texture of birch logs also has this CTM repeat system as well. So if you place down enough of these birch logs, then you will actually see these very large individual planks which span multiple blocks like that. I think that looks awesome. I would love to do this sort of a system for every plank texture in the game, and I hopefully will eventually. But again, it comes back down to what I was talking about before with my confidence in my pixel art skills and wanting to improve my pixel art skills before I commit to making a large amount of Caelesti, because I know there's work to be done and it could be better before I do it all badly and then end up having to revert it. Or maybe that's just the learning process. I'm not entirely sure. This same texture is also applied to birch stairs and birch slabs. The slabs are fine. They work exactly as you would expect. Even the top half slabs, they work fine just by coincidence because you have the same sort of structural system appearing on both the top and the bottom of the slab. The stairs don't work as well. The same CTM repeat system is applied to the stairs because it just works fine. But you can see here there are some slight issues between the stairs and the full blocks next to them. Like that doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't be there ideally. But stairs are quite a nightmare. I gotta tell you, like this was what killed working on Birch for me personally, is the idea that you can have a stair like that, but you can also have a stair like that, and worst of all, you can have a stair like that. Like, what do you do with that? What do I do with this? I have no idea. I mean, in theory, you could have, I guess, like a case for every single potential rotation of this block. Like, I mean, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. You could do it. You could make this all look logical and connected, like it was built out of individual planks. but it would be a headache to set up, and I didn't want to do that at the time, so I ended up ditching this at the time and not working it anymore. But they are still there. You know, your birch stairs aren't going to look completely out of place next to your birch planks. These aren't finished. Like, that doesn't look like how I want it to look. You know, that's kind of what I placed these down here for. The slabs are fine. The slabs are okay. They're just chilling. They work fine. But the stairs, oh boy, the stairs. I don't want to make these stairs. I really don't. We also have custom textures for the birch door and the birch trapdoor. The main pull of me wanting to work on this was the idea of adding translucency to the birch door and having this sort of like paper door appearance. So you can just straight up look out of your birch door, but it's like a translucent white instead of a usual, you know, completely hollow window like you would have in vanilla. I think that looks pretty good. I like that. Maybe the texture of whatever these features are supposed to be on the door are just too dark, like far too dark. Maybe the amount of 3D... Oh, that doesn't look good, does it? Ooh. Maybe the amount of depth on this texture implies that like an actual 3D handle would work well for this door, but I didn't do it. Maybe the same thing would work for the trapdoor. I don't know. There's a lot that could be changed about this. Also, I'm just realizing, look at this. Look at this inconsistency. I was like knowledgeable enough to make sure that this translucent section matched up with the pixels of the trapdoor on both sides. Like, that's two different panes that are separated to make it look correct on both accounts. So you see that this pane is aligned with those pixels, and this pane is aligned with those pixels, but I didn't do the same thing for the door. It's just one pane in the middle showing the texture on both sides. That's just an inconsistency, and that just means that the door is worse. Damn. Well, this is why I'm stuck in a remake loop, because I see all the faults of everything I've made, and I want to just remake them. That's all I end up doing. And finally, for the birch-related features, we have the birch sapling, which very simply just has two different block states. Every sapling in the game has two growth stages. It has, I believe, like, stage 0 and stage 1. So technically, your birch saplings, and every sapling in Minecraft, needs to be pinged by, like, random ticks twice in order to grow into a full-size tree. So if you plant down a field of birch saplings, and as you're, like, watching them grow, you will occasionally see this, like, base level stage, and then this, like, slightly more developed stage as the tree itself is growing. I really wish that saplings had more growth stages because you could make this look really interesting, but I'm just working with what's available here. So there are two different custom birch sapling textures, which look kind of neat. They look pretty good. Even though I already went over quartz, we do have one other quartz feature to mention, which is when you stack two slabs of quartz slabs, which is what they're called. Usually when you have a quartz double slab in vanilla, it just uses the exact same texture as the full quartz block. But I have a custom block state set up so that if you have a double slab, it has this unique texture. And each of the individual slabs also use this texture. So you can see here the top slab has like a border around the edge there, which wouldn't usually be there in the vanilla game. I think this is a nice feature. In theory, almost every double slab block in the game could have this sort of a system. The only one I've done it for in Caelesti so far is quartz, just because I think it's a good example of how this kind of feature could look. So that's the only thing that's worth really noting about quartz. Next up, we have Farmland, which comes with some interesting features. Farmland is due to be upgraded, similar to how Dirt has been upgraded. The Dirt color map is not currently applied to Farmland, unfortunately, because I haven't gotten around to creating that sort of a feature for Farmland just yet. And it's kind of easy to understand why. This is Farmland when it's not moist, and this is Farmland at full moisture level, and every single moisture level in between, of which there are 8, has its own texture, which means that if you remove the water source from Farmland, you will see it slowly tick down from 7 to 0, like so. You can see that there's a really simple gradient going across from left to right. So the idea is, with the color map, how's that going to work? You know, I still haven't really figured it out. That's why Farmland wasn't included in the Dirt upgrade video. But yes, at some point in the future, I will also be applying the same technique to Farmland. I think what I'm going to do is just simply have it that the moisture level dictates how saturated and dark the base texture is, and then the color map just goes over that regardless. So it won't be as pronounced as you can see here, but it will still be there. You'll still be able to see some sort of a difference between the two. There is also this feature in Caelesti called Flame Grass. If you're playing with the default language, then you will actually see Crimson Roots as flame grass. The idea for this was actually stemming from the Nether update, which was so long ago now. My idea was to have these be animated, essentially. So in certain biomes, in certain environments, the grass would sort of animate upwards to imitate the appearance of fire. I don't know. There's not really much of a thought process behind that. I kind of thought maybe vegetation blending in with fire, maybe, but now we just have this like red streaky flame grass instead in Caelesti, and it's still in the pack, it's still here, it still works, but this is again one of those like remnant features that needs to be revamped for sure. Next up we have the flowers, which are a really big part of Caelesti, to be honest. These flowers are pretty sweet. Every single one of these flowers, other than the double tall flowers, which I'll get to in just a moment, uses a color map for the stem. So depending on what environment you place these in, they'll have a different appearance. And there are some special cases as well, such as with the dandelions. If I go over here to a cold environment and place a dandelion down, you can see it changes instead to this like scattering dandelion variant instead, which I think looks pretty nice. This is just biome based. There's no transition for that. It's just based on which biome you're currently stood in. This also applies to a number of other biomes, such as old pine taiga, like old growth spruce biomes. I just said two different names, neither of which are the actual biome name, but you get the idea. So these sorts of dandelions will spawn in certain biomes around the world, and it just adds a little bit of variety to dandelions. And you can also see there, as we go across from left to right, the actual stem of the dandelion changes from like a mid-green over here to more of like a bright, almost like minty, very white green, in fact, the further we get into a cold environment. And that applies to all of the flowers. Every single flower that you see here has a color map, which follows roughly the same style as the grass color map. So the idea is that these flowers always match up with the grass of their local environment. The only other one of these that I really want to talk about is the poppies. The poppies are slightly different again. They have a darker and more like rich green for their stems instead. The poppies are, I've got to say, the poppies are like one of my favorite features in this pack now. The way the poppies work is they are actually 4 panes in sort of like a diamond shape like that. And wherever the texture of the stem is on those panes, there's a custom top texture for the flowers. And every single flower head aligns with a stem. So they actually look really logical and reasonable. This is kind of an extension of an idea I tested a long time ago with a poppy model, which was kind of similar to this, but not as on point as this one is, I guess you could say. But yeah, there are many variants of poppies depending on where they're placed. I think there's like 16 variants of poppies, I think. There's a lot of variants of poppies. At the very end of this video, there's going to be a State Surveyor special, just going over like everything in the pack that I haven't done a State Surveyor segment for yet, which I'm dreading editing, to be honest, because it's quite a lot of work to edit a State Surveyor special. But I'm looking forward to it as well, because I do really like the State Surveyor. Also, State Surveyor mentioned by name in a video, mad. The tulips are a little bit of a special case. These were designed before the rotation limits were unlocked in a recent version of Minecraft, so I am debating on changing these up just a little bit. I recently mentioned in a video about having all the tulips point directly upwards, kind of like how the alliums look over here, but people didn't seem to like that idea. The idea of them drooping a little bit all over the place was very much favored. So what I think I might do instead is just reduce how rotated these are, because at the time I made these models, the rotation limit was 22.5 degrees on a given axis, and now you're not limited by rotation amounts, and you're not even limited by a single axis. So we could really change these to match up with the texture underneath them, definitely. So I might consider doing that in an update quite soon. The blue tulips are also a little bit of a cop-out. These are actually cornflowers. I haven't even changed the language file anymore. I think they were at one point, but not anymore. I do want to change these back to cornflowers at some point, simply because of how tulips spawn. Usually when you find tulips, it's in like a flower forest, I believe. You find all 4 colors of tulips. But the cornflowers spawn a lot more frequently. They spawn in meadows, they spawn in plains. I believe they spawn in a number of other biomes as well. So seeing blue tulips on their own, as cornflowers are usually placed by world generation, looks a little bit odd. So as much as I like the idea of having blue tulips in Caelesti, I think I am going to revert these back to cornflowers in the very near future. And it's going to be nice to make a neat cornflower model as well, especially with the unlocked rotations. Double tall flowers are a little bit of a different story. I actually worked on all 3 of these before doing any of the current single block flowers in the pack. Rose bushes were the first one. You can kind of tell here by the texture style. It's a lot more crunchy. There's a lot more contrast in the textures. I used to have this really bad habit in Caelesti where for some reason I picked up from other artists that I was kind of talking to at the time and inspired by, that having as limited as possible of a color palette was a good thing. So I believe the stem of these rose bushes only use like 4 colors, which is, it's not enough. It's just not enough color. And as a result, they look a little bit out of place. So these are overdue for a revamp. Again, same story. Unlocked rotations are going to do wonders for these for sure. The only one of these 3 plants that I am kind of happy with, although again it's probably still subject to change, is the lilac. Lilac has a really interesting model system in which the bush that you see underneath has 2 variants, and then every single flower pane that you see around the edges has multiple variants, and they're all weighted completely randomly. So I'm going to save it for the end of the video, but I'm just going to tell you right now, this is the most random block in Caelesti. I would even argue this might be the most random block ever. Like, if anyone can find me a block more random than this, I'll be very impressed. Sunflowers aren't particularly interesting compared to the lilac, unfortunately. They do have a number of variants, though, all making different heights for the sunflower. Currently, these all use the same stem texture, which just gets cut off at the bottom differently, depending on how tall the sunflower actually is. But again, this is a really, like, hallmark feature of Caelesti, exaggerating the features of items to avoid the usual problems of pixel art. So you can immediately tell, like, these sunflowers are massive. I think the vanilla sunflowers are about the same size as just the central seed section of mine. So yeah, they're huge. They're absolutely ginormous. And when you look out at sunflower plains and see all of these beautiful yellow flowers, I think it looks really good. I really like these. Glass. I'm going to bet that you've already seen the glass, because, I mean, come on, how could you have not at this point? Glass in Caelesti has, to my knowledge, a completely unique feature among resource packs, in which you can see the back face of the glass, which I think is so beautiful. I had this idea a little while ago to add this for my glass. I don't know where the idea came from. I think it just came from my brain, to be honest. But it's a really simple system, actually. All it is, the glass model uses 1 cube on the outside for the usual glass texture, and then it has 6 panes on the inside, which is shifted in ever so slightly to avoid Z-fighting issues with things like stairs and non-full blocks placed directly up against them. And then we have CTM, which applies to the front and also the inside textures as well. So when you have like a large section of glass like this, it looks like a tank almost. A lot of people have asked me if I can change glass to actually look like glass in real life, where it basically just blurs everything through it, especially when you have like a really thick, I mean, this is a meter thick piece of glass, right? It would be very strange to look through, and it would distort everything behind it massively. That's not possible. It's just not possible, I'm afraid. This is a stylized choice, right? It's just a choice to have the glass look this specific way. It's not based off of how glass looks in real life. I just think it looks good. That's it. That's as far as it goes, really. And this glass model is applied to every type of glass. So we have a custom tinted glass, which has 2 unique textures for the front and back face. And we also have colored glass, which again has the front face and the back face. And there is a full CTM tile sheet for the glass. This layout of blocks is actually taken from Biome directly, which showcases every single variant of CTM tile that you would have for a given block. And as I was placing this down, I realized there's an error. Oh, I don't know what that tile is. I'm gonna have to find out. But yeah, just one tiny mistake here where the wrong type of texture has been inserted. So we have like a little gap in the corner there. One pixel missing. I've never noticed this before in all the time of making and testing this glass. But other than that one mistake there, I think it's pretty solid. So I'll fix that at some point, and I'll mention it in an update video when it does get fixed. But yeah, so back face glass looking pretty good. Glass panes are a bit of a different story. I tested a system for backface glass panes, and it was a little bit buggy, but it is still in the pack and you can use it. If you go to the rest backup screen for Caelesti, you'll see there's this option for glass pane backface rendering, which you can enable. It is disabled by default. I ran a vote on my channel a little while back asking people, do they think that backface glass panes should be the default option? Well, at the time, it was just, should they be in the pack at all? That was before we decided to go with rest backup support. But you can still enable them, and I think they look pretty good. It's the same system as you'd expect. It's just, you've got like an inside texture for all of the glass variants. And there are some issues with this even still that I'm yet to fix, and I want to mention those just now. So the way that this system works right now is each of the glass colors, each of the colored glass colors. The colored glass colors? What am I talking about? We're an hour and a half in, by the way. Good on you. So each of the stained glass colors are set up in a way where they're designed to work for this double pane feature. So each of them have an opacity which is about half of what vanilla does, which means that when you look through a glass block, you're technically seeing this texture, this like shade of color twice. So the transparency kind of evens out because you're looking at both. And when I designed these glass panes, it was using the same texture system as the full glass blocks. So when they're double glass panes like this, when you have the backface rendering system enabled, they look correct. But as soon as you disable the backface rendering system, they start to look a little bit weak, a little bit too transparent, because there isn't a secondary texture which reverts that feature of having the glass kind of like halved translucency to make up for the backface effect. And you can definitely see it right now. I'm very sure of that. But if you just compare the color of these to the color of regular glass, they're a lot less vivid, they're a lot more translucent, and that is just purely an oversight on my part. The real solution to this would be to keep the backface rendering system as an optional feature, but have a secondary set of glass pane textures which are enabled when backface rendering is disabled. I hope that made sense. I think that made sense. I'm not asking you if I made sense because I think you're dumb, it's because I think I'm incoherent, which I think I just proved. While we were talking about the dirt before, I did sort of briefly mention about the grass color map as well, but we're going to go into it in a little bit more detail here. I'm also going to showcase the grass itself. So first of all, short grass. This texture is actually inspired by the texturing style of Stardew Valley. I really like Stardew Valley. It's a big favorite game of mine. I really enjoy it. And I thought it would be interesting to change up the way that grass is made entirely. So they have these sort of like wider and more chunkier grass bits, which I think look pretty good. The way that these grass models work is also quite random. They have two panes across the middle like you'd expect in vanilla, but the textures on either pane are always different. So you have quite a variety of different looking grass textures all in one place. So any given singular piece of grass has, like, you see there, you got like that one large piece in the middle, but the other texture doesn't have that. So it always looks quite unique depending on which angle you look at it from. And also a feature which I keep forgetting to mention, but this is something that always bugs me about vanilla. In vanilla, when you look at a texture and then when you rotate around, the texture looks the same because the pane isn't mirrored on either side. But all of my, pane-based textures in Caelesti, they are mirrored correctly. So when you rotate around them, the texture actually like looks logical and reasonable. It doesn't flip around unnecessarily. You could probably make an entire pack just reverting vanilla's tendency to do that, really. But yeah, so short grass and tall grass, they are looking pretty good. Tall grass is extremely dense. You can barely see through it most of the time because there's just a lot of grass here, which I think looks pretty nice. Reminds me of the scene in The Lost World where they're like, don't go into the long grass. And then they get killed by velociraptors because they went into the long grass. Velociraptors, which look nothing like velociraptors, may I add. They're more like Utahraptor. But there's a whole thing around that. I recently found out that Jack Horner is the reason why velociraptors didn't stick their tongues out like lizards in Jurassic Park, because he was like a scientific advisor for the film. So like, rare Jack Horner win, am I right? Like, he stopped the velociraptors from having lizard tongues, so I guess I can forgive him a little bit for all of his other crimes against paleontology. Yeah, so grass has a color map. Grass has many different colors depending on what biome you're in. I believe there are currently around 14 different colors of grass, but some of these that you can see here are kind of obvious. We have plains, sunflower plains, swamp, forests, and also pale garden. And I believe there's dark forests. We have savanna and badlands. And then over here we have some of the weird edge cases. We have like beach and snowy biomes, which I guess you don't usually see because they're covered in snow. And we also have custom colors for like the nether wastes as well. All of the fauna in Caelesti looks kind of dead and dull and decayed in the nether because, like, why are you placing grass in the nether? Don't do that. And moving swiftly on, we have item frames. Item frames are a little bit unique. You can already see here there's something kind of interesting going on with item frame items. But yeah, so item frames have this sort of dull brown leathery texture, which is just based off the fact that you need to use leather to craft item frames. And they also have this custom wooden texture around the edge as well. The back texture is a little bit odd. It looks a bit like a barrel, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, it just works. Glowing item frames are a little bit different. The back texture, the leather area, is kind of a little bit brighter, which just kind of gives these a bit of a visual distinction rather than the vanilla system where I believe they have no visual distinction at all. Or maybe it's too much visual distinction. I can't remember. I haven't seen vanilla item frames in some time. But when you're holding a glow item frame, or when you just view it on the ground, there is an animated texture of these like sparking, flashing lights, which just simply signify that this is a glowing item frame rather than a regular item frame. And it makes the two a lot more visually distinct in the inventory. I don't know, my thought process here is just to take the opportunity to make two very similar items look more distinct, so you can more easily tell what's going on when you're looking at these close together in a single inventory. And item frames also have a custom system for when they have a map in them as well. When item frames have a map, they become much larger to incorporate the full map texture, and the back texture is also expanded in a very reasonable way to reflect the larger item frame as well. I've always found that kind of funky in vanilla. You have like an item frame, and it changes size based on whether or not it has a map in it. So, but it works. It works fine. We have to incorporate textures like that, so it's okay. It's all right. I'd never actually considered this before, but there's no reason not to make item frames the full size of a block all the time, so that they don't expand when a map is placed in them, and then you just have more space for displaying items inside of them. That's not a bad idea, right? I'll write that down and forget about it and probably never do anything with it. Moving on, we have oak trees. Oak logs are, oh my god, I love this. I love this so much. I love it. When I was trying to make oak logs, I was having a bit of a struggle, to be honest with you. But I tried to make a mock-up texture to illustrate what it was I was going for the oak texture, which is precisely this. And Stridey of Vanilla Tweaks, the wonderful Stridey, looked at this and said, hey, that looks really like a preview version of oak that Jappa was working on when he was remaking all the textures for Minecraft in like 1.14 or whatever it was, and showed me this like Twitter screenshot of a single oak texture, and it was glorious. It was beautiful. So I started with that. I took a very similar approach to making an oak log, and then made 7 more variants of it, as I do for pretty much everything in Caelesti. And now we have this incredibly random but really nicely well tiling texture for oak, which just looks so good. This is so good. I think this looks so much better than oak in vanilla. It's so much more interesting. There's a lot more detail going on in the texture. You actually get this implication of individual sections of bark split off with these like grooves in between, and they're so random. They look so random. They look so good. There are a couple of issues, like you can see here with the light parts at the top here. They look like they're sort of a cut-off point at the top of the block, like that. You can see a very clear line. That's just a simple problem of my pixel art skills, I guess. But nothing that couldn't be easily fixed in the future with a little bit of a revamp. Oak leaves are not as good, in my opinion. These are, again, overdue for a rework, and hopefully I'll do all the leaves at some point with the new unlocked rotations. But yeah, oak leaves have a custom model, as kind of similar to the birch trees that we've already talked about, where you have a block in the center here, and you also have a cross model somewhere within the block. Now, this cross model is quite random. It's moved around within the block based on different models. It's also rotated very differently. Again, this was during the time of 22.5 degree rotation locks, and there are some problems that arise from not having certain features available in the game at the time. But these look pretty random, pretty bushy. I do really like bushy leaves. I think they look much better than the vanilla's approach of just a square, like a cube. I don't think it looks as good. You get a lot of underhang with these leaves, so if you have a really short tree and you're stood directly underneath it, you just see leaves, which I think is quite fun. But yeah, it's pretty good. We have custom leaves for oak, and they look pretty nice. We have a very similar system for dark oak. Dark oak leaves actually have the exact same texture as regular oak leaves, but just with a darker palette and obviously darker colors applied by the color map. But dark oak logs also have a very similar feature to oak logs, where they have these individual sections and grooves that you can see here. Now, these aren't a recolor of oak. These are entirely custom, and the sections are intentionally larger and more pronounced than the oak parts, the strips of bark that you have there. But I gotta say, with the dark oak logs, this underside texture, or I guess top texture, of the log looks so good to me. I really like that. I think it looks really nice. You do often find these as well. You find them in like wooden mansions, woodland mansions, and also pillager towers as well. So you do actually see these dark oak blocks throughout the world quite a bit. But yeah, they look pretty good. They're just like a larger, chunkier, darker version of oak, as they should be, implied by the name of dark oak tree. There is also a custom model in Caelesti for jungle trees. These were at one point called like cacao trees, I believe. because of the fact that they grow cocoa beans off of them, but I've not stuck with that, clearly. But yeah, the texture of the leaves for the jungle trees, I think is actually pretty good. They're very diagonal. They're very, like, streaky. You can definitely see that for sure on the top texture here. But again, they have a very similar system of different cross models applied throughout. So yeah, the jungle trees are looking pretty nice. They're pretty bushy. They have a similar bushy effect to all the other leaves I've talked about so far, and they look pretty good. So yeah, that's all there really is to say about jungle leaves. Moving on, I have a little setup over here, which I've not actually demonstrated practically yet, so I have no idea how effective this is really going to be. But this is just a little experiment to showcase how different and, you know, dynamic the tree color maps are in Caelesti. Because I think that having, you know, oak trees spawn in so many biomes, so many different environments they spawn in. The same goes for, like, birch as well. Dark oak and jungle, not so much, but, you know, they still have different color maps, definitely. So what I've done in Caelesti is basically take all of the biomes that these trees would typically spawn in, and then add some extra ones in if you choose to transport the saplings over there, and then give them really dynamic and very varied appearances. So first of all, I want to change this to sunflower plains. Unfortunately, there's a limitation of how much space you can actually fill with a command block, so here we go. So if you have a sunflower plains, you can see here immediately the dark oak trees are very pale. They're much more white than their usual counterpart, and the oak trees are this, like, beautiful pink color, which, yeah. This was put in Caelesti before we had blossom trees? What are they called? Cherries! Cherry saplings, of course. What? Oh, man. Yeah, these were added in Caelesti before cherry trees were in the game, so at that point in time, these were sort of my, like, mock cherry trees. In regular forest biomes, we have a different story. This is kind of like the default oak tree color, right? They're actually a little bit paler in plains, as you can see over here, for a good comparison. But yeah, birch trees are also a little bit more green in forest biomes as well, because, of course, birch trees do spawn here. This was decided before Mojang decided to add leaf litter to forests. If you go back and watch one of my older update videos, the Birch Forest update, I added falling leaves and leaf litter to birch biomes using CTM and custom block models and animations well before Mojang ever did it. And then they added falling leaves, and they added leaf litter, but they added leaf litter to forests, not birch forests, which makes me really inclined to change forests to be autumnal and birch forests to not be. So I am really debating on making that swap at some point, and maybe even making, well, most likely making it a rest back ops option as well. But yeah, so trees and forests look a bit different once again. What's the next biome I have to punch in? Swamp. Okay, swamp. There we go. Okay, so in swamp biomes, everything looks a bit different again. So the typical rule of the swamp biome color map is that things look very, like, well, swampy, I guess. Oak trees are a little bit more green, a little bit more brown in that biome. You do, of course, find oak trees in swamp. There are a specific oak tree variant that exclusively spawns in swamp biomes that you can't harvest and can't, like, grow in a repeatable way. Like, swamp trees are actually a non-repeatable, a non-reusable resource. What's the word? They're a finite. Swamp trees are a finite resource in Minecraft, which is bizarre. I still don't get why they didn't just remove the swamp. Like, you added the mangrove swamp, and it looks so much better. Just remove the swamp. Just move the witch hut to the mangrove swamp, and remove the swamp. Would that be so bad? I don't know. You could just convert old swamps into mangrove swamp, and then players with old worlds would have, like, a funky looking biome in their worlds. But no, we still have the weird and kind of incomplete looking swamp biome and the mangrove swamp, I guess, which works for me for something we'll talk about in just a minute. But, you know, it's weird decisions from Mojang as always. In the jungle, we have different colors once again. You do, of course, find oak trees in jungle biomes as well, so they also have a custom color for this biome. If you find jungle trees in jungles, they actually look very dark, very rich, very green. Usually when you place jungle trees down, they look a little bit more sickly, I guess, like they're not in the correct environment. But in their correct environment, the environment they spawn in, they're very dark green, which to me reads as they're healthy, they're doing well, they're in their correct rainforest inhabitant, that was just the wrong word, brain. The rainforest habitat, like they should be, so that's good. And then oak trees are a bit more vivid, a bit more green, just simply to contrast the jungle trees that they spawn alongside in jungles, so that's pretty nice as well. We also have savanna. Now, I can tell you well in advance, savanna trees just look quite dead. I haven't really done acacia trees yet, so they're not in the... Never mind, they're quite dark. Never mind, I was wrong. I was very wrong. I guess oak trees do actually spawn in savannas as well, so they just have a different color. Yeah. I guess I haven't really given much attention to savanna biomes just yet, so I didn't really think that part through. But, I mean, really, oak trees should be kind of dead in savanna biomes because it's very dry and hot. I mean, that's been reflected in the birch trees correctly. I did that correctly. But I guess oak trees were just an oversight in that regard. Yeah, I'll update them at some point. The Pale Garden is an interesting one, because the Pale Garden is a very unique biome in this game, in which everything in it follows a very similar color theming system. Birch trees are just still their regular yellow, which I think is fine. Oak trees look kind of dull. They look kind of grey, as you can see here. Dark oak trees, which often spawn alongside Pale Gardens, don't have much of a color difference, because I found that you know, Pale Gardens and Dark Forest spawn like right next to each other 99% of the time. So having the very edge of some of the dark oak trees go very pale just looked kind of bad to me, so I chose to keep these a very similar color to their dark oak counterpart. And then jungle trees have a very similar treatment. Again, they're very dull, they're a bit gray, just to kind of match up with the aesthetic of the Pale Garden, which I think looks pretty good. Next up, we have Taiga, and the theming of Taiga for the trees that I have covered already is very much autumnal. Everything in a taiga biome, other than jungle trees and spruce trees, is very autumnal themed. So if you plant a dark oak tree in a taiga, it will have these very orange leaves. I think these look really nice. I think planting dark oak in a taiga would actually make for a really nice looking environment. And of course, oak trees, which I believe can spawn in taiga, or maybe at the edge of taiga, they also get like a very orange color as well. Which is quite similar to the birch tree, actually. So yeah, we've got big autumnal biome if you decide to plant in taiga biomes. Next up, we have snowy taiga, and this is a bit of a different story again. Dark oak trees have a really unique system in snowy taiga, where they have this deep reddy brown color, which I think looks so nice. And this is actually inspired by the weirwood trees from Game of Thrones. There was a point in the past where I experimented with the idea of changing out the logs of dark oak trees to just be white instead when they were placed down in a cold environment, and alongside these red leaves they looked so good. But of course, it's too drastic of a change for Caelesti nowadays. Being able to place down logs in a given place and have them look a predictable way is something that I want to retain. So even though the idea of having these white logs along the red leaves looked really good and was, in my opinion, quite creative, I would rather make it so that builders aren't restricted by certain things like that. Trees that spawn in this biome are typically very pale, just to fit the aesthetic of the local environment. So oak trees are very pale, jungle trees are very pale once again, and also birch trees have got this like minty green color, which actually looks a lot like their vanilla counterpart when they're placed down in cold environments. Next up, we have windswept forest, and this one's another unique one for the oak trees once again. Oak trees do spawn in windswept forest along with spruce trees, I believe. So to give it more of a dynamic appearance and more variation, the oak trees that spawn in windswept forests have this like deep crimson red color, which I think looks really nice once again. This one really is just unique for the oak trees. I don't think the other trees actually have any sort of system for windswept hills. But yeah, when you find oak trees in windswept hills, they will have this nice red color, and they contrast the spruce trees of the environment. They stand out, they look unique. The whole point of this really is just to have like loads of different oak variants, which I think look pretty good. And last but not least, we have nether wastes. Once again, the whole theming of nether wastes, as with the grass that we talked about a second ago, is to have everything look like it's kind of dying, like it doesn't really belong here. The same can be said for birch, but not to the same degree. These are obviously, using a very bright yellow texture underneath, so adding a bit of brown to them just simply makes them look a little bit more dead here. But oak trees do not look like they're doing very well in this environment. Neither do jungle. Dark oak aren't doing as badly, but they're still pretty sickly looking. Don't treat your plants badly, yo. Don't plant trees in the nether, right? Why would you do that? And for my next trick, we have a rather recent addition to Caelesti, which is the complex lily pads that you see before you here. I've actually made a devlog on these lily pads, so again, if you want to get more information on how these were developed, you can go and watch that devlog. But yeah, I'll talk about them a little bit here. So first of all, lily pads have a good number of variants, as with everything in Caelesti that's natural, right? It's got to be very random. So we have different texture variants for lily pad, one of which is kind of like, I want to say orthogonal, like this. Is that the correct word? Orthogonal? Where, it's like, it aligns with the block grid, I guess. And then you also have these like diagonally offset ones like this, where the texture is kind of rotated around 45 degrees. Now, each of these lily pads is rotated round in every which direction, so you get a lot of variety, and there are a number of texture variants and also size differences between these as well. And occasionally lily pads will actually spawn with this sort of like yellow tint, as though they're maybe just a little bit different, maybe a little bit of a variant, or maybe they're more sickly, or I don't know, just a different lily pad. And of course, you can also see each of these lily pads are surrounded by a good number of small lily pads. And I've completely rewritten lily pad biology in doing this, which is purely for the aesthetic of the pack. But you can see here underneath the water, all of these lily pads have a connected system of roots flowing beneath them. So the main central lily pad has this one large root system, which doesn't actually connect to anything, it's just free floating, and there is a reason for that. It's because the model can't go too far down, and I mean, there would be issues if it did go too far down. But then this root also splits off, and you have branching arms, which then connect to the small lily pads on the sides. I think these are pretty good. I'm pretty happy with these. They look pretty nice. And just by pure coincidence here, I placed down all of these, and we got no water lilies. But usually, when you place lily pads down, you will get a number of water lilies spawning on them as well. You get these white, yellow, and pink variants, and I think they look pretty nice. The water lilies can spawn on any lily pad, so it's like it's a block states random system. So again, it's very varied, very dynamic. You will struggle to find the exact same model setup in two places close together. So it's pretty varied, pretty random, and I do like it. The only change that I want to make to these in the future is actually a feature of polytone, I believe, where you can basically specify in the block state that the model should have a little bit of like placement variance within its block. How do I describe this best? In vanilla, grass has this property where when you place it down, you can see this is actually a really good example. When you place it down, the model isn't in the center of the hitbox like that. It will actually offset it in one of two in two directions, in X and Z. So yeah, so you get this kind of like offset, and that will be varied for every single grass that you place down. I can't really say grass block because that's a grass block, but you get the idea. So they all have like variants, right? So you can actually adjust those using polytone. There's a feature within the block states file that you can like tinker with. So I want to have it so that these lily pads have a tiny, tiny bit of vertical offset. And the reason for that is because occasionally you will get lily pads spawning in a way where they just overlap with each other. Now, this isn't too bad of an example. I already took this into consideration. These small lily pads on the edge of the block model are ever so slightly lower than the regular lily pad to avoid that issue of Z-fighting. But if you place them down, and by coincidence you have two of the small side lily pads spawn in the same place, which I'm actually struggling to find now, which is a good thing because you know it's a problem. Then they will Z-fight, unfortunately, unless they have the exact same colors at that location. Apparently, I would like to reiterate that it's a good thing that I can't find this example because it's a bug, not a feature. But it does happen. It does happen occasionally. But yeah, so that's probably one of the only changes I'm going to make in the future. And lily pads do have a neat little system here whenever they spawn in mangrove swamps as well. The only two biomes in the game that lily pads naturally spawn in are the swamp and the mangrove swamp. So in order to give them a bit of variety when you encounter them naturally in a survival setting, the lily pads in mangrove swamps are a little bit different. So first of all, they have these variegations running through them, which I think look really nice. They're really interesting. They make them very visually distinct. And these actually use a color map, not biome-based CTM. So as you move over from swamp to mangrove swamp, you can actually see it in action here. You can see the variegations ever so slightly coming through. If I make a little bit of space here and just fill this in, we can probably visualize this really well, because what we have here essentially is a gradient between swamp and mangrove swamp. So you can see here, as the lily pads move between swamp and mangrove swamp, they become more variegated. So whenever you have these at the edge of a biome, it looks really smooth. There's no cutoff point where it's like they're either variegated or not variegated. It's a smooth transition between the two different types of lily pads, which I think is a really interesting way of doing it. I've never seen anyone do this technique before, of having individual elements of a texture be color mapped like this. I think that's a really interesting way of doing it. This is only possible with Polytone because we now have like multiple tint index support. So thank you, Polytone. Polytone is such a good mod. I'm so happy we have Polytone now. It's just, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, it took a little bit of time to update to 1.21.11, and there are some development issues for sure with Polytone, but nothing that can't get solved in the future. And I love the mod so much. It's so powerful. It allows so much creativity, and I haven't even scratched the surface with it. There's still so much more that could be done with it, and I want to try all of it out at some point. So for those of you that are watching this in the background or haven't looked at the video's time in a while, we have just passed the 2-hour mark. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. It's so cool. This is going to be the longest video on my channel. Look how much we have left to do. It's going to be the longest video on my channel by a lot. So I hope you're enjoying. I hope you're getting lots of inspiration for your own projects as well. So without further ado, the next features I want to talk about are the mushrooms, the brown and red mushrooms, of course. The brown mushrooms are pretty interesting. They have 4 different variants for the actual mushroom itself, one of which has this like smaller mushroom on the side, so you get like a bit of height variance, a bit of size variance as well. And all brown mushrooms have a chance to spawn table mushrooms on the block beneath them, which I think is a really neat feature. This appears more often than you would realize. Brown mushrooms spawn in a number of different environments. They're supposed to spawn underground, but I don't believe they do currently in the game, probably because of an oversight. We know how Mojang are at this point. Like we know what they're doing. Or do they know what they're doing? Does anyone know what they're doing? I don't know, man. Hytail's pretty good. I've been playing it quite a bit recently, but that's besides the point. These brown mushrooms spawn with some really interesting model variants, as you can see here. So brown mushrooms spawn with table mushrooms on the side, which can look pretty good on fallen logs, or just on the side of blocks they spawn on, like in Mushroom Islands as well. And it gives brown mushrooms their own unique characteristic feature, which I think is really neat. It's also a good demonstration of how you can use expanded block models to make something as simple as a mushroom a lot more interested, like just adding a little bit of extra detail there on the side. It makes this one tiny block more interesting, and that's what Caelesti is about, right? It's about making these really simple features way more interesting with the magic of mods. Even though this isn't really a mod, this isn't a modded feature. This is just a model. But yeah, so red mushrooms also have their own unique characteristic feature as well, in that there are just a lot of them, which I think is pretty neat. So red mushrooms have 6 locations around the main central mushroom at which smaller red mushrooms can spawn, and each of these are weighted completely differently. So there are a very large number of red mushrooms. I can't remember exactly how many, but it's pretty good. The State Surveyor enjoyed it when we did that one video. So yeah, red mushrooms are pretty random. And I've got a little setup here to showcase the mushrooms as well. No side blocks, so the brown mushrooms are looking a bit sad, although you still get like the height variance with these smaller ones, which I think looks pretty decent. But yeah, the red ones over here, you can see, they do look incredibly random. Each red mushroom comes with smaller side mushrooms. You will occasionally find one that doesn't have any smaller mushrooms around it, so it's just on its own, and then you'll find one that has like 4. There is a very small chance that all 6 of the smaller mushrooms can spawn at once, which just looks so dense, but it's so rare. You'll never encounter something like that frequently. To be honest with you, just finding this one over here with 4 around it, that is actually quite rare as well. So yeah, if you ever find a mushroom block, a red mushroom block in your world that has a very large number of the small variants around it, you could like build a shrine around it, because it's the rare mushroom. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, big mushrooms also have custom textures as well. These are ancient now. These are one of the first things that were designed for this iteration of Caelesti. These actually originated in another pack called Caelesti Light, which I started developing whilst Optifine was having a lot of development issues around about the time that 1.15 just changed everything in the base game, in terms of like the back-end code. So, we had that like full update where they just added bees, but it was a game changer for modding because they had to just change how everything worked essentially. And I believe Optifine took over a year to update. So I ended up just like making a vanilla only pack, which was called Caelesti Light because it was smaller and lightweight and didn't use mod support at all. And during that time, I wanted to experiment a bit more with block states and tiling textures. So we have this quite interesting underside texture for the brown mushroom, which is again quite random, but also tiles correctly. I think it looks pretty good. And mushroom blocks are actually more interesting than I realized. I should have actually... oh, I don't need an axe, do I? So if you have mushroom blocks and you place mushroom blocks next to them, they sort of get like sheared like this, almost like when you carve the side of a log block with an axe. And they also have custom textures for that version of them as well. The stem ones have this like brown color. The brown mushrooms have a lighter brown color. I don't know if the underside actually works. Yeah, so yeah, the underside works like that, right? So when the underside is removed, you get that texture, which is how they automatically spawn whenever you get giant brown mushrooms. And the red mushrooms are interesting once again. You have this like red texture like this, but then when you remove the side, you get like this bright pink texture, which I think looks pretty nice. That's a pretty unique texture, really, isn't it? There isn't really much in the game like that, so yeah, that's kind of cool. It reminds me of like cake, I guess, which it isn't great because it's a mushroom, but you know, you get the idea. But I think these look pretty nice. I think it's just more interesting again to have more colors involved in the large red mushroom like that. So yeah, big mushrooms also have custom textures as well, and they look pretty nice. They could probably use an upgrade. They could use variants. I didn't do variants of the stem texture. I didn't do variants of the outside texture for the brown mushroom either. It looks a little bit repetitive. So these could probably use an upgrade. It's another one of those features that I developed during the time where I thought that having a really limited pixel art palette was the best way to go. So these do not use many colors. Maybe this... Oh, shit, never mind. Maybe this uses like 4 colors, I want to say. Let's count them, shall we? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 colors for this texture. It's not enough, is it? It could do with like at least 2 more, and it would look a lot better in my opinion. So I probably will end up redoing these at some point. But the red mushroom ain't too bad. The red mushroom has a lot of variance with the spots, which is nice. One of the recent changes I made to the red mushroom blocks is that the spots on the outside are now all completely random. So previously, say for example, if this texture had been chosen right here, you would have this exact pattern on all sides of the mushroom block. But now each of the faces are selected independently. So when you're looking at the corner of them like this, you will see that they have like 2 different textures either side and potentially 3 different textures if you're looking at one where the top is exposed as well. So again, just makes it more random, more varied, more dynamic, which is always a win. And here we have some lovely name tags. Name tags have been changed up a little bit in terms of the base texture of name tags. They use the same palette as my string item texture for the string within the name tag, and they just have this custom texture for the name tag itself as well, which I think looks pretty good. When a name tag receives any sort of text whatsoever, it doesn't really matter. It will gain this new texture, which appears to have some writing on it, which just makes them more visually distinct, so you can see when a name tag has or hasn't been used. And whenever you rename a name tag to any of the Easter egg name tag things that you have in vanilla, such as Dinnerbone, probably the most famous one in the game, where, naming a mob Dinnerbone will turn it upside down. It actually rotates the texture of the name tag upside down to show what's going to happen. You also have Jeb underscore, making it sort of pulsate through these rainbow colors, which is to reflect the fact that, of course, if you name a sheep Jeb underscore, its wool will become rainbow colored. We also have Johnny, which is for the Vindicator that wants to murder everything. We have a black and white one here for the custom toast rabbit skin, and we also have another one called Creeper Magnet underscore, which is a reference to the data pack, the Creeper's Code. And now for the note block, which is an odd-looking model for sure. Each note block has an indentation in each of its 4 sides, which actually shows the note that it's going to play. Now, this isn't a perfect system. I've seen some other people do this in a much more specific way, which is even easier for tuning your note block related machines. But as you can see here, when you tune a note block, you will actually cycle through each of the notes that you're going to play. Now, the issue is there's no indication of what octave this is actually at. So even though these are both F sharp, they're both going to play the same notes. Can I just get a sword? There you go. That doesn't work? That doesn't work? Okay, well, I'll just go in survival mode then. There we go. So you can see these both say F sharp, right? But they're different, like, octaves. So that's probably the only problem with these that I really have. Maybe I'll change these to have an indication of what octave they're at as well. But I don't know, it's more of like a mock-up really, isn't it? But, it works. It makes it slightly easier to tune these, definitely. You could do more. I've seen some resource packs where they even have like a little icon on the top for what instrument it's going to be. That's pretty sweet as well. I wouldn't consider doing that for mine. I don't think it's necessary. But I would consider changing these to indicate what octave they're at when you're tuning them, just to make it even easier to tune your note block machines. But yeah, note blocks are pretty interesting. They're probably overdue for a texture upgrade, to be honest with you. But yeah, you know. Next up, we have the oak logs, which I've already talked about before when I was talking about the leaves, but not to worry, we'll talk about them a little bit once again. So in case you missed it before, this texture is based off of a mock-up that Jappa did while they were redesigning the textures for 1.14. I really liked the mock-up. I thought it looked really, really good. So I went ahead and designed 7 other variants with a very similar style to that one, and that is now essentially how the oak log of Caelesti looks. While we're here, though, I will talk a bit more about the stripped variant. First of all, this feature is very similar to the birch logs, in which you will have a consistency between the bark and stripped version of the logs. But instead, there's a little bit of a catch with this one. So where you have these darker lines insinuating grooves within the bark, those will translate to the lighter sections of the stripped log texture instead. So it kind of inverts the way the texture is instead. There isn't really a huge amount of logic behind that. It's just a stylistic choice, and I think it looks pretty good. But once again, when you change these logs into stripped oak wood instead of logs, you have a different texture system. So when you place the logs down like this, like a wall, you have this like hard edge at the very edge of the logs there, which kind of insinuates like the edge of the log. But when you turn them into wood, you get a much more smooth surface without that hard line edge. So you have 2 different styles of texture using 2 very similar blocks. And again, this is something that I wanted to do just because it makes the block more interesting, more dynamic, is that, you have like the log version, which is stripy, and you have the wood version, which is not stripy. So you can have 2 different styles of stripped oak wood, if you will, which I will. As you might expect, dark oak works very similarly to oak. It's not the same texture. This is a little bit different, as again, I think I mentioned this before. But instead of having just the lines that you have in vanilla, we have these insinuations of like larger streaks within the greater oak wood texture. And those will also translate over to the stripped version. It's the same system where the dark grooves within the bark will become the lighter and more forward-facing sections of the dark oak log when it's stripped. And the same system is in place for the stripped oak wood as well, which I'll actually, I don't know why I didn't build a wall for this one, but I'll just do it quickly. So it's the same thing. You have like the dark outline edge on the logs, and you don't have the dark outline edge on the wood. So again, it's just a little bit different, gives you a little bit more of an option when it comes to building, and I think that looks, I actually like this texture quite a lot, right? I think that looks pretty nice. Stripped dark oak wood specifically, pretty nice, pretty good. Next up, we'll talk about the pumpkin. First of all, the pumpkin itself has a custom texture, which is okay, I guess. It's all right. It's not brilliant. It's not my greatest work. It's a pumpkin texture, and it does the job. But the more interesting part of pumpkins comes down to the stems and also the carved pumpkins, which we'll go over in just a minute. First of all, the stems. The stems are massive. They're absolutely huge, as you can obviously tell here. Some of them, when fully grown, are as tall as I am, which I think looks pretty cool. It's pretty visually interesting. This can look a little bit wacky if you have like a really dense and compressed farm. Like you can place a block directly inside these, and it just does that. I mean, obviously this is worse when you have like a larger one, right? It's just inside the block above it. But these are the kind of things that I don't really take into consideration because I would rather be more creative and do something that I think looks more interesting. But yeah, pumpkin stems get pretty big pretty quickly. This is the first, second, and third growth stage, and by this point, it's already about as big as the vanilla stem gets at maximum age. But as they get older, they eventually start to sprout these yellow buds, which eventually form into yellow flowers, which I think look pretty nice, make the pumpkin stem look a bit more interesting. And eventually, when it sprouts a pumpkin, it will slump over to the side here to produce its pumpkin. Now, there are 2 variants of every single growth stage of pumpkin stem, and they are randomized, but they are consistent. So if you have a pumpkin in one place, it will always use the same of the 2 variants for each growth stage, and also each type of slump that it has as well. So a little bit more variation, and they do of course have rotations as well. And now for the carved pumpkins. As you can see by this large set of carved pumpkins laid before me here, there are a very large number of variants of carved pumpkins, although to be honest with you, there could be more variants. What I did a few years ago was, for a Halloween update, I actually opened this up to the community and said, if you submit a 16 by 16 black and white texture of how you would want a pumpkin to be carved, I will convert it to a carved pumpkin texture and add it to Caelesti in the next update. And I received a decent number of submissions. I think there was like about 30 carved pumpkins in the end. And they all made it into the pack. They all look pretty good. So we have quite a number of variants here. There's one with like a huge gaping mouth there. We have the troll face. Very, very creative, you know. We have an uwu. So, yeah. There's also, I love this one. I don't know what it is about that one. I think I think it looks great. We also have Sans Undertale, which is, yeah, that's a thing. I believe there's a creeper face. Yeah, there it is. There's a creeper face as well. That one's pretty good, right? I think that looks, it's very appropriate, right? This was a really fun thing to do. I really enjoyed this. It also meant that I had to do less work, so that was that's always a win for me. What I might do this year, once again, for the Halloween update, I might just open this up again. I imagine I'd probably receive a lot more submissions this time, which would be really fun. But with a block like this, I'm all for having just an absolute shit ton of variants. I think it's a really cool thing to do for a block like this. So yeah, look forward to Halloween of 2026, and I might open up the pumpkin carving submission thing once again. Be a neat thing to do. I'll probably rework the pumpkin texture if I do that, actually, because it's a little bit crap. Moving on from the pumpkins, it's time to talk about rails, and I have quite a bit to say about rails because I think they are quite an interesting feature in my pack. So first of all, the bog standard rail just placed on the ground like this is basically just a 3D version of the vanilla rail texture with a custom palette for the beds and a custom palette for the actual rails themselves as well. There isn't much to say about this one. It is quite literally the bog standard rail. It's not particularly interesting, but I think the 3D model looks really good. It's kind of a similar logic to my ladder that I also have, where it's very simply it's a 3D version of the ladder texture, which I think looks much nicer than the 2D plane that you have in vanilla. So it's just a really simple and, in my opinion, reasonable upgrade. We also have the curved rail here, which isn't fantastic, but in my mind, this is the best solution to this specific problem, in that you have the rail beds here slanted once again at 22.5 degree increments, as was the limitation at the time this was designed. But also the rail itself uses this extruded pixel art texture, which I honestly think this is probably still the best way of doing this. With the recent unlocked to model rotations, you could in theory make this curve extremely smooth, but I don't know how the texture itself would then look. We could do some like weird shenanigans, which I'll talk about more in a second, to make that look good, but I don't know. I think this is still fine. I think this is probably still the best approach to this specific problem, so that's the curved rail. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the powered rails, and I gotta say, this is probably, if we count the rails as a feature, then this is my favorite part of this feature. So the powered rails are essentially just the rail model with this extra segment in the center with the redstone and the gold. Now, the idea is that when the redstone is powered, with a combination with the gold from some whatever magic, it makes the minecart go quickly. But of course, when you have a minecart on rails, it will just run free. But when you have a minecart on unpowered, powered rails, it actually gets stuck. There's like a sort of stopping force to the powered rail. Now, in my mind, this middle section is causing friction. But when it gets powered, it lowers down, removing the element of friction stopping the minecart, and instead allowing the minecart to use the gold redstone power thing, whatever's going on here. I'm not really sure. I really like this feature. I think this is a great way of doing powered rails specifically. Just simply the fact of having this middle section raise and lower to actually insinuate that friction that you experience with minecarts on unpowered powered rails. I think it looks really good. So yeah, my powered rails are pretty sick. I pretty much like this. I like this. The good feature. The detector rail also has something interesting going on here in that it has like outputs on the side. I could have been way more prepared with this, but never mind. So as you can see here, the detector rail has the same kind of, it's the same palette for this like middle section, which I don't really know what that is. It's make-believe really at this point. But it has two outputs on either side, which actually glow red when a minecart is placed on top of it like that. I think it looks pretty good. And you can see that the pressure plate in the middle, or like the little pad, it's not really a pressure plate, is it? But the pad actually presses down, and then the side lights up. And it is emissive as well, which I think looks pretty nice. So detector rails also have an interesting thing going on there. We also have activator rails. This is a very similar concept to the regular rails once again, but the side segments where the rails are a little bit wider, and they have this like redstone section, which again lights up when powered and is emissive and looks pretty neat. And I could have planned this better, but I didn't. So there's the powered ones once more. But yeah, rails do have a little bit of a weird thing going on with them, which is it's very Caelesti for me to have done this, I feel. I mean, of course it is. It's me making... How would it be anything other than... Never mind. So yeah, so rails have an interesting feature for the raised segment. I really like this 3D model, but for the life of me, I could not figure out a good way of doing the raised rails. I tried a good number of different techniques, and in the end, this was the solution I landed on, and I still really like the creativity behind this solution to this day. So first of all, you have two raised rail beds, which are like on little wooden posts like that, which I think looks fine. It looks pretty good. It also looks like it's more reasonable for me to be standing inside of these because, of course, they don't have a hitbox as well. But yeah, the real weirdness of this texture is the side texture of the rails, which, as you can see, is kind of odd. Look at that. You have these slanted textures, and you can already see it there, how this is being done. But the side texture of the raised rails is incredibly high definition. I think the actual figure is a 2048 by 1024 texture for the side texture of the rails, and then you just have like panes to model the top and under segments, which are just fine as they are. But it's a mimicry. It's a mimicry of pixel art. You can see here it does just use diagonal lines at very high definitions to imitate the appearance of the side texture. Now, when I zoom in, that looks horrific. A lot of people have expressed disdain towards this system. But when you're not zoomed in, when you're just looking at it, you can't tell. It looks fine. It looks absolutely fine. So just don't zoom in. Don't zoom in on rails and you'll be fine. This feature is also used once again in powered rails and also activator rails as well, where the side texture is once again, it's a mimicry of an actual pixel art texture. It uses the exact same system you can see here. It's just a diagonal line which mimics the appearance of a slanted trapezoid pixel art style. So yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I like this. I think it looks fine. The powered versions work as well, as you'd expect. They just lower as they usually would do. And the activator rails are the same. It's just a very similar system of it being a little bit wider than the vanilla rail with the same technique to mimic the appearance of slanted pixels. For those of you watching, you'll have to let me know in the comments below what you think of this feature. I think it's a really creative solution. I think it works. It achieves what I wanted it to achieve. So if you don't like it, sorry. Next up we have sugarcane, and sugarcane is one of the more random blocks in Caelesti. I feel like I've said random quite a lot in this video, but it's the only way to describe this right. Sugarcane has exactly 10,000 variants, which is actually not very random for Caelesti, believe it or not. But as you can see here, there is quite a bit going on. Each individual segment of sugarcane has quite a number of different things going on. So the actual sugarcanes themselves have multiple texture variants, and they are randomly distributed across each of the 5 canes that you have within a single sugarcane block. And then each sugarcane also has a chance of spawning with different leaves sprouting from it. And occasionally you'll just get a section of sugarcane that just doesn't have any leaves sprouting from it at all, which also looks interesting in my mind. Sugarcane looks very dense. It looks way more interesting than the vanilla 2D pane-based model in my mind. And again, the randomness of this is just, it scratches my brain in the right way. I don't know. It's a good feature. This was actually my first ever experiment with Polytone's multiple tin index systems. The sugarcane has a color map for the cane itself, and then a separate color map for the leaves. Now, in this environment, they look pretty similar. They don't look very different at all. But when you go into different environments that sugarcanes usually spawn in, so swamps, jungles, and even if you place sugarcanes down in cold environments as well, the leaves and the canes will tint independently, and they have different color sets. So yeah, this was more of just an experiment to see how Polytone's color map systems work, but I like this feature, and it's still in Caelesti, and it will remain, because this is one of those like modern features where I'm like, yes, absolutely, this is staying, this is good, this is what I want this to look like, and I really like it. 10,000 variants of sugarcane. If that's not enough sugarcane for you, I don't know, add another leaf model. edit the pack, learn resource pack development. It's fun. It's a never-ending task. The next thing I want to talk about is the tripwire hook, and more specifically, the tripwire hook string, or just string whenever it's placed down in the world. So tripwires have a custom model, which uses my custom wood palette primarily, and also a custom texture for the iron section of the end of the tripwire hook here. When you step on the string, the model will adjust to show that the string has been stepped on. But the string itself is kind of the main attraction here. The string uses an incredibly high definition texture to make the string appear really small. And this texture is also translucent as well. So you can see here, if I'm looking at the string, you can really see the color of the grass behind the string. And this just helps string to look a little bit more invisible, really. That's all I'm really going for here. The only place in the game where you actually find tripwires naturally is in jungle temples, so you're usually looking at like a really dark and grey and gloomy room, so it just makes it more difficult to actually spot the tripwire until you're very close up to it. And that same model is used in the actual tripwire hook itself, where you have this other section of string at the end. And yeah, that's it really. It's just a different way of doing tripwires and tripwire hooks. Next up, we'll talk about vines a little bit. Vines are, again, one of those features in Caelesti, which is currently using a very limited color palette, so we have only 4 colors here for the vines. But vines do have a color map, which sort of matches up with jungle trees and also mangrove trees as well. But the more interesting aspects of vines are, first of all, the vertical CTM. You can see here the bottommost vine on each of these segment of vines does have an end piece which doesn't connect to the block beneath it, and that will obviously update dynamically as you place and remove vines. I think this is a really good use case for vines. There are many resource packs out here that do this exact thing, even ones that just change the vanilla vines to do this exact thing. It's a really good feature for vines. However, my vines do also have custom models for when they're placed on the ceiling as well. So when a vine is placed on the ceiling, there will be a chance for it to spawn with a cross model here, as you can see, which makes it look a little bit more interesting, a little bit droopy. And there's also a really large cross model on this one here, you can see, which goes down quite a bit further. These could really benefit from Puzzle, actually. Puzzle is the mod that allows the lily pads to have a really huge model with the lily pad roots stretching down quite far. So the vines would also benefit from that feature because this drooping quality would just be increased even further. So at some point in the future, I probably will come back to these and give them a little bit of a revamp. Same thing as you'd expect, increased color palette, larger models, maybe a more interesting set of textures as well. But they look pretty nice. They look pretty good on mangrove trees, as you can see here. And they look pretty good on jungle trees as well. Next on the list is clay, and this is a rather simple feature compared to what we've talked about recently, but again, it shares the same issue of a very limited color palette, just 4 colors once again for the clay. These were developed around the same time, and also the same time as the mushroom blocks that we talked about before. But it's pretty good. I mean, as textures go, as simple textures go, I'm pretty pleased with this one. It's stayed in Caelesti for quite some time because it does the job well. It does what you'd expect it to. It looks a little bit like clay. I've gone for a different approach with clay in Caelesti, where it's got this sort of very dull brown color as opposed to the very gray color that you have in vanilla, and I think it looks pretty nice. I did obviously have them in the chest before, but there is a custom item texture for clay balls. It probably would have been appropriate to put these next to the clay for the comparison's sake. But yeah, that's the texture of clay, and that's texture of clay block. There isn't really much interesting to say about clay. This was just like a good test of making a decently well tiling texture with a very limited color palette, and because of the fact that it's okay, it does the job. It's stayed in Caelesti for quite some time now. Next up, we have the warped fungus. These are actually called glow shrooms in Caelesti, and the reason for that being because they have these emissive spots all over them, which look pretty nice. I do actually really like these. Again, they've stayed in Caelesti for some time because I think they're just a good feature. I think they look good. And also the large glow mushrooms as well, they also have a very similar feature. So each of the sides of these glow shroom blocks, as they're called in Caelesti, will have different variants of this like glowing dotted texture, and these are once again emissive. These look really nice in warped forests. These are a really cool feature. When I made the Nether update many years ago, the warped forest was a big focus. I think the warped forest is a really interesting biome to work with. You have a lot going on with it. You have the twisting vines, you have sprouts and warped... What are they called again? There's like a warped roots, they're called. Interesting that they're called roots. That gives me a bit of inspiration. But yeah, the only thing that's remaining from that update now in the warped forest are the glow shrooms and the glow shroom blocks, which are supposed to reflect the glow shrooms, of course. There used to be a custom texture for warped stem in Caelesti, which had this interesting well-tiling randomized pattern, which I thought looked pretty good. There was an idea in the past to have this animated texture moving up the warped stem, or maybe the crimson stem, or maybe both. I don't really remember that well. But it was a bit rubbish. It didn't have a very good color palette, and it looked very bland, especially in the glowing segments in between, like these parts here, which are just dying to be emissive. So once again, I do hopefully plan on re-adding those at some point in the future. I have a really interesting plan for the warped forest biome in the future, but I'm still sort of building towards it. I feel like there's a few skills there that I'm lacking in, which would be really essential for the idea that I have in mind. But warped forest still look pretty good. I mean, I think that this appearance of the warped warp block being glow shroom blocks with the emissive spots, I think it looks pretty nice. I think it's way more interesting than Vanilla's approach to these giant mushrooms. So yeah, those are still in the pack as well. In vanilla Minecraft, you have the golden apple and the enchanted golden apple, and the enchanted golden apple cannot be crafted. It can only be found as a rare loot item in, I believe, dungeon and stronghold chests, and maybe other structures. I'm not really sure, but I know it probably does spawn in those. I think it does spawn in dungeons at least. But yeah, I kind of thought about this a little while ago, and there is no reason for the enchanted golden apple to be a golden apple. You can't craft it from an apple, so in theory, you could change this to anything you like, and this is exactly the sort of thing that I really like doing in Caelesti. When a feature doesn't need to be a specific way, when you have a bit of leniency with what you can do with it, I like to completely change it up just for the sake of novelty, if nothing else, right? So a little while back, I ran a poll on my channel, which was deciding what the enchanted golden food item would actually be. I made a little mock-up of a bunch of different items, and I really should have known well in advance that the cookie would win. But I think this is really neat. So yeah, the enchanted golden apple has been replaced by golden cookie. You can see here we have the golden apple still in the game, as you'd expect, because again, this kind of needs to be an apple because of the fact that you can craft it from an apple. But you can't craft this. You can only find it. So it's fine for it to be a cookie, which I think is pretty neat. Next up, we have ladders, and ladders are a relatively simple feature in Caelesti. I mentioned this before when we were talking about the rails, but the whole point of this ladder model is just to be like a 3D version of the ladder texture that you have in vanilla, but of course with a custom color palette which matches up with the rest of the neutral wood items in my pack. And I think this is a really good approach to ladders. Some people do it where you have the ladder, I forget what we call these, because these are rungs, right? Like a ladder rung, but that's a ladder... the other part of the ladder. Some people do this in the opposite way, where the rung is further back and this part of the ladder is further forward. I think this looks better, personally. I think it also makes more sense in terms of what would be facing the player, what you would be holding on to as you climb it. But honestly, I quite like this. I think it's pretty good. This is the second iteration of this ladder model now. There was a point in the past where the texture for it was extremely simple. It was almost like plastic looking because of how conformed it was. So I decided to take another look at it and also variate each of the individual rungs as well. So they each have their own unique texture, which makes it look a little bit more natural, a little bit more realistic. And I do actually quite like this ladder. I think this looks pretty good. So I mentioned before that I've laid out this list of blocks kind of in a weird fashion. I went through all of the individual subfolders of the resource pack. So we started off with like blocks and items and GUI and environment, and then eventually moved on to the quite substantial custom folder that I have in Caelesti. Everything else in the rest of this video now is going to be entities, modded features, and sound effects. So some of the more interesting stuff in Caelesti for sure. First of all, I'll start out with the Creeper, which is the first CEM-based entity that we're going to go over, which is custom entity models, for those of you that are uninitiated. This is easily one of the more complex aspects of resource pack development, especially when it comes to CEM animations as well. And the Creeper does actually have those. You can see here it's kind of bobbing up and down to imitate some sort of breathing or energetic motion. And Creepers look quite cool when they walk around as well. They have like this custom walking animation, which looks a bit like a scuttle, I guess you could say. Yeah. Pretty good. Creepers also have a custom animation when they're running, although I guess I can't show that right now because they're not going to run away from me. Can I have a cat, please? They'll run away from a cat, right? That's a Vindicator. Vindicato. There you go. So they have like a gallop whenever they're scared and running away. Yeah. 2 different walk cycles based on the limb swing speed. Limb swing is a value that goes from 0 to 1, or I guess it could technically go over 1 if they're moving insanely fast. But typically in the vanilla game, if you're just playing survival mode, entities will move between usually about 0.3 limb swing and 0.7. So I was able to detect roughly which value they're moving at, and then have 2 different walk cycles based on that value, which I think is pretty sweet. Creepers do also have a number of custom variants as well. The original creeper texture, if my memory serves correctly, is based off of the oak leaf texture. Not the one we have in the current game, but like the original really crummy oak leaf texture that was designed like over a decade ago now. What they did, I believe, was just take the oak texture and then make it like brighter and maybe add some extra color in to fill in the gaps, and bang, you've got a creeper. So to me, that kind of insinuates that creepers are supposed to be camouflaging against whatever they're nearby, which also makes sense with the fact that they are silent, they try and creep up on you, they blow up. It kind of fits with their whole vibe, right? So what I've done is try and take that to its absolute extreme and have creepers always try and blend in with their local environment. So as you can see, the creeper looks pretty good against this grass. It's pretty much the same color as the grass. The way that this works is I have a base texture for creepers, which is just stored locally on my computer, which is using the same grayscale palette of the grass, and then I'll add the local grass color map on top of that to make the creeper texture. And there are creeper variants for a very good number of biomes. They always match up with the local grass color. So here in sunflower plains and flower forests, where the grass is a bit brighter, we'll talk about that in a second, the creepers are also brighter as well. So they always reflect the local grass color. Over here in birch forest, they look a bit more brown. They blend in with the grass. In forests, they match the sort of darker color that you have in these are supposed to be rare, by the way. But we'll talk about them in a second. In savanna biomes, you guessed it, they look like savanna grass. In swamps, they look like, you guessed it, swamp grass. You get the idea. So whatever biome creepers spawn in, they try and reflect the natural color of the grass there. However, creepers can only do so much. They can only go so far when it comes to blending in, right? So the Pale Garden, which is, in my mind, not a very natural biome, but has something kind of off and cursed about it, the creepers actually struggle to blend in as well here. So you get this kind of off gray color where they've tried to blend in with the local grass, but they've sort of failed, I guess. And that also applies for another biome we'll talk about in a second. But again, over here in the taiga biomes, they reflect the grass color. But over here in snowy biomes, they try to replicate the snow texture, but they don't do a perfect job. You can see they don't really blend in with the snow because it's a plant, right? They're trying their best to blend in with the local fauna, flora. They're trying their best to blend in with the local plant life, but snow isn't plant life, so they do a good job, but they aren't doing it perfectly. And as I showed here before, there are a number of creeper... first one. As I showed here before, there are a number of creeper variants for flowers as well. This doesn't work perfectly, obviously. No one's looking at this and going like, oh, that's a dandelion, and then getting really shocked and surprised when it starts galloping towards them. But again, my idea is for the creepers that they're trying their best to blend in with their local surroundings, and they just thought, hey, why not dandelion, right? But it doesn't work too well, buddy. What are you doing? What are you doing? So yeah, there are a number of different places where flowers do, of course, spawn, and the creepers do also spawn with the local flowers. So some flower plains also have dandelions, so there is a dandelion variant. Flower forests have allium, so there is an allium creeper. There he is. There you go. I recently discovered, using EMF and ETF, you can actually detect the block that a mob spawned in. So, for example, I could set it up where if a creeper spawned on this exact block here, you could detect that there was a pink tulip there and then have a different mob texture based on that spawn. However, I don't know if mobs can spawn within flowers. I don't know if that counts as a valid spawning space. I'll have to look into this more, but that would be a much cooler way of doing it if that is possible. There is also a way of searching for which block is above and below the mob, which this has so much potential, and I'm sure you'll understand why as I explain it. So ETF allows for a system where when a mob spawns, it can check the first block that the game finds beneath it and the first block that the game finds above it, which is potentially really powerful. You could have a system where a creeper spawns underneath a tree and it detects that the first block found above it is a leaf block, and therefore it should be trying to blend in with the tree and not the grass or potentially flowers. So yeah, always learning, always finding out new information, always finding ways to improve the pack, and always busy. So you know how it goes. But yeah, in a number of biomes, creepers can also spawn and try and mimic the trees as well, which I think looks really good. I'm a big fan of this feature. So we have birch and oak here. So this right here is a forest biome, and creepers do have a chance of spawning with this oak log texture, I think. They actually blend in extremely well with trees. I think it looks really good. It's just the same texture, so like of course they do. I mean, what did you expect? Forests do of course spawn birch trees, so you can also find the birch creeper here, but the birch creeper is typically found in the birch biome, where you do just have exclusively birch trees. So you'll find a lot of birch creepers in your autumnal birch forests. The weight at which these skins are used is also a reflection of how often these things spawn in that biome. So things like dandelions, it's just a random number. There isn't really much thought put into that. I think it's like a 1 in 7 chance of having a dandelion creeper versus a grass creeper. That was perfect, thank you, sir. But in forests, because you have a lot more oak trees than birch trees, you are 4 times more likely to find an oak creeper than a birch creeper. But in birch forests, you only have birch creepers because there are no oak trees in birch forest. So there is a bit of thought put into it. There's also there's also a dark oak creeper, which can spawn in dark oak biomes, which I think looks pretty swanky. Can you stop that, please? Thank you. There we go. But yeah, of course, dark oak biomes are probably the most varied biome, actually, for creepers, because you can find both oak and birch in dark oak biomes. And again, the weight at which these skins spawn, as you can see here, is a reflection of how frequently those trees spawn in that biome. As I mentioned before, with the whole search upwards and find the first leaf block thing, we could make this work so much better. So you could have it be that if a creeper spawns next to a tree, it takes the textures of that tree, instead of just having a weighted randomness to it based on the biome that it spawned in. So this system could be even better. This could work really well. Because, of course, this isn't the only place you can find dark oak trees. If you cut down a dark oak tree and plant it somewhere else, you could have a creeper spawn next to that dark oak tree and still take the dark oak texture. So it's just a better system. It's a better way of doing it, right? So it's something that I want to get around to in the future for sure. Swamps are also using this sort of a system. So yeah, you can find oak creepers in swamps just because the local swamp trees also have oak logs in them. And last but not least, there is a single other feature to mention as well. Dandelion creepers can also spawn in spruce biomes, but as we have with dandelions in Caelesti, when dandelions themselves spawn in these biomes, they have this like scattering dandelion effect instead, and that model is also reflected by the dandelion creeper of this biome. So again, always trying to take the textures of the local flora, including the CTM variants of that individual block as well, which I think is pretty neat. Dandelions were the first one that I did for creepers. Allium are the only other one right now in terms of the flower creepers, at least. And that was kind of the primary goal of doing the dandelion first, was to showcase that this will also reflect the CTM variants of the block that it's trying to mimic. So yeah, there are quite a number of creeper variants. I believe there's over 30 creeper variants right now. Most of those are just for grass and snow, which is, the whole point of this is that they would try and take whatever the surface material is of that local biome. But then, of course, you have the flower variants and you have the wood variants. So yeah, given how many different variants of grass there are in Caelesti, and also how the color of flower stems reflects the local grass color, there's a very good number of variants, and I will just keep adding to this list as we go forward. Next up, we'll talk about the minecarts and the 2 primary minecarts that I feel get used in the game. So first of all, the regular minecart. This has a much larger model than the vanilla minecart, and it's a lot more complex as well. It uses these like slanted parts, which is kind of odd for the theme of this pack, I guess. But I think it looks pretty good. The whole point of this model is that it's large enough to fully encompass the player model, so you don't have your feet sticking out the front like you do in vanilla. It looks a little bit better, in my opinion. You still get the problem if you swing around, your feet still just clip straight through the minecart, but just don't look sideways when you're in a minecart. Look straight ahead. That's the way to go. But yeah, we also have a custom model for the chest minecart as well. This uses the same texture system of the actual chest, of course. And because of the way that minecarts work, they don't really have a rotation to them. They just sort of snap back to one of 2 rotations based on which direction they're facing. So I kind of needed this to look the same regardless of which way it is rotated round, for consistency and continuity when it's rotating around corners. So the chest is sort of this like double-sided chest with a latch on both sides, as you can see. There's no way of detecting when the player interacts with a storage minecart, so I can't have it like swing open like I would like. But given how this works, that wouldn't actually look any good anyway, because they would like clip back into the other side of the chest. So yeah, just a custom model for the chest minecart as well. The other minecarts do automatically use the custom minecart base, but with the hopper, furnace, TNT, command block, and I guess also the spawner minecart as well, it just takes the block model and inserts it into the minecart, as you can see there. There is a potential to have a custom model for each of these with a bit of uniqueness to it. So, for example, you could have the hopper minecart have like a storage silo on top of it. You could have the furnace one have like a chimney maybe. You could have the TNT minecart have like dynamite sticking out of it perhaps. But I just haven't gotten around to any of these because, minecarts are subject to change though, because of this problem in particular. I said before the minecart model is much bigger in Caelesti than it is in vanilla, and as much as I think it looks good, it doesn't look good when it's pressed right up against a block like this. You can see it's actually like 4 pixels into the block. It's huge. This is a huge minecart model. It doesn't look it really, but it's pretty big. So this problem in particular, because I mean this is usually how your minecarts will look when you get out of them. They've ended at like a block like this, so they are just fully clipped into the wall, which I'm not a huge fan of. So I would consider just shortening this down in the future, even though we'd go back to having legs clipping through the front. Like, as I said, your legs just clip through the sides anyway, so you can't really solve that problem. It's always a push and a pull, right? Solve one thing and then you make another problem somewhere else. But yeah, so I might shorten minecarts down at some point in the future, and they're probably overdue for a different texture as well. But yeah, minecarts are there. They're working. They look all right. And here we have the skeletons of Caelesti. First of all, this skeleton model is custom built by me with a 3D ribcage and hollow eyes and nose, as you can see there. I think this model looks pretty good. I like the idea of like slimming down the bottom of the skull like that. I think it looks more interesting. It also gives the skeleton a more interesting silhouette as well. And this actually is a collaboration with Ewan Howell. Ewan released a resource pack some time ago which gives the skeleton physics when it dies. And he basically just provided me with the animations and grafted it to my model so it would work with that. So I've got a little darkroom set up over here, which will, I'll showcase some of those death animations in just a moment. But right here, we also have a second variant of the skeleton as well, which is just a villager skeleton. It's also got a slightly longer skull as well to reflect the longer villager head. This is kind of brought about by the idea that you have both zombies and villager zombies in Minecraft, so I thought skeleton and villager skeleton, that's the whole thought process really. Let's go have a look at some of the death animations. So when you kill a skeleton, it breaks apart. Oh wait, hang on. Okay, there we go. So yeah, when you kill a skeleton, it falls apart, which I think looks awesome. I mean, come on, how good is that? Ewan is very good at CEM animation. He's extremely talented, and I was very fortunate to be able to have this feature in Caelesti. Ewan's also promised me a feature for zombies at some point in the future. He's got a pack right now, which I believe is unreleased. I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, I think this feature is really nice. I do have wither skeletons set up to be talked about in just a moment. But wither skeletons have the exact same system. When you kill a wither skeleton, it falls apart, falls to the ground, has a little bounce, which I think looks pretty good. There's actually quite a bit going on with this as well. If you kill skeletons and wither skeletons in water, then they don't have that same gravity effect. They just sort of break apart and float away from you, like in the direction that they took damage from. It's a crazy system. I have no idea how it works. It's well beyond my capabilities of CEM animation, but I think it looks really, really good, and he was happy for me to use it in the pack with credit, of course. So yeah, we have really, really well animated skeletons, which I think look really good. And next up, we'll talk about the zombies. These were originally Steve and Alex, by the way, but I think because I reloaded the game, or maybe added some more variants recently from the coffee donators, they've just shifted around, but never mind. I guess it still works as an example because I can show here that we have zombies with 4 wide hands and zombies with 3 wide hands. So there's actually 2 variants of zombie model which reflect the Steve and Alex skins. So we have like the wide skin and the slim skin. And yeah, the zombies in Caelesti are a really good feature. I really love this feature a lot. So essentially, all of the zombies in Caelesti are based off of the 9 vanilla skins that you have. So Steve, Alex, the other ones, I don't know what you're called. I know there's like Effie, McKenna, There's more, but all of the vanilla skins that you can get from the launcher, like the built-in Minecraft skins, they all have a zombified version of them. And then there are a shit ton of variants which are based off of the skins of all of my donators from Coffee. If you go to my Coffee page, which is linked in the description, you can send me a bit of cash, and I will turn your player skin into one of the zombies in Caelesti. I think it's a really neat thing to have a feature like zombies just have an absolute ton of variants, because it's a zombie. Like, it's supposed to be a zombified player. The base zombie skin in Minecraft is based off of Steve, right? It has the same clothing as Steve. So the implication there is that zombies are zombified players. So to me, it would make sense to look out at a field of zombies and see like a bunch of different players that have all had an unfortunate demise. There's so many zombie variants now. It's so good. I'm just going to place a bunch down here. So many zombie variants. I think this is just a perfect system for zombies, right? There's so many different skins, and they're going to be so loud. I didn't realize, so I'm going to back on out of there. Some of them are actually based on the skins of the admins of my Discord as well. When I was setting up this system as a way of sort of like showcasing how much potential it had before I had any donators on Coffee, I went to my Discord admins and said, hey, as a thanks for being a Discord admin, let me zombify your skin, and it can be like the first rollout of the zombie skin thing. So yeah, there's a ton of zombie variants, an absolute ton. And you can also be added to the list if you go to my Coffee page. They're currently sold out though, because I'm so backlogged. There's like, wait, I've got it written down here. There's like, currently I have 21 more Coffee zombie skins to make. So yeah, it's currently sold out on the Coffee page. But keep an eye on it. In the future, when I post another showcase update video, I will let you know if there are more spots available. This won't be a forever thing. I will eventually have a cutoff point. I'm currently thinking that I might round this off at like 100 or maybe 200. I don't know. I have some plans for the zombies. But yeah, I mentioned it briefly before about the CM animations provided by Ewan. I believe Ewan is currently working on a pack where zombies dynamically break apart as you kill them. So you might like swipe them with a sword and maybe their arm falls off. And it's complete with like a bounce, gravity, it stays in place even as the zombie keeps walking towards you, and then it disappears, and there's a puff of smoke particles, which is what happens when a mob dies, like those exact particles just animated in an entirely custom way. It's a very impressive system, and I believe I'm also going to have access to those features at some point in the future, but not until the pack is completely done. So yeah, Ewan, if you're watching for some reason, release the dynamic zombie breaking pack, please do it, because I want them for mine. Next, I'll talk a bit about the projectiles of Caelesti. So we have the bow and the trident. First of all, arrows do have a custom model. This is a very recent feature in Caelesti. This was actually in the last update, update 47. But the arrow entity is just an extruded texture, which is the exact arrow texture. And I think this is a huge improvement on on the vanilla arrow. The vanilla arrow is so ugly to me, and I think as much as this system is a massive leap in complexity and looks very different to how vanilla achieves this same solution, I think this looks really good, and I would definitely consider doing this again in the future for other projectiles. In I don't know, any pack really. I add this to your pack. This is just a great feature, right? I think it looks so much better than vanilla's attempt of doing projectiles. The trident is also the same way. The trident has a custom texture, as we saw before, and the thrown trident uses the same system, so it's just an extruded texture based off of the trident's actual texture. So it's the same thing. So consistency across stuff like that. Usually the trident has that like odd 3D model, which aggravates me, because like, why doesn't the mace have a 3D model? Why don't spears have a 3D model, but the trident does? So I fixed it. I just made tridents use an actual item model, both when they're held and also when they're thrown. So if you take anything away from this video, do this. I think it looks really good. I think it looks so much better than how vanilla approaches projectiles. So yeah, make your arrows and your tridents extruded textures, and they look better. Moving on from projectiles, we'll talk about the bee, and the bee has also recently been updated, but it was a really simple change, just made the wing flaps much faster, which I think look really good for the style of mob that we have. Bees are a really simple change. They're just a smaller model compared to the vanilla bee. They have all the same texture variants that you'd expect. So they have like a regular version and a pollinated version and like an angry version with red eyes. But yeah, just a smaller, tiny bee. You can see there how big it is compared to its hitbox. Bees in vanilla are absolutely massive. I don't like the appearance of them personally. So I just wanted to make the bee really tiny. And I think that my approach to the bee looks pretty good. I do have some more plans for redoing the bee model at some point in the future. The wing flap upgrade was kind of a step in that process. But yeah, that's kind of a feature I'm working on in the background, so I'll leave that for the devlog video. Next up, I want to talk about the spider model. And for those of you with arachnophobia, there is an option within Caelesti's Rest Back Ops screen, which allows you to disable the custom spider model. Changing this spider model complexity from creepy to crawly will set it back to the vanilla model really simply. So I'm not going to change it because it's just the vanilla spider. I just loaded into the world here. Please load. There we go. Oh yeah, new recording session, so hi. But yeah, so here is the spider model. It's pretty sweet. It's not. It really could use some changes. This was my first stab at CEM in, I think, like 4 years. I really wanted to get some basic animation principles down, such as randomly timed ambient animations. You can see there the chelicerae will like vibrate periodically. Blah, 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 blah. There we go. Really interesting system for that. It's an animation curve which switches between one ridiculously large curve and then a tiny segment of vibrational curve, like very high frequency curves. And it's clamped. So what essentially happens is you get this situation where they're usually just dormant, but when it hits that high frequency section, they start to jitter quite fast, which I think looks pretty good. I've also got a custom walking animation for the spider as well. You can see there, which is pretty creepy. I think this was the main complaint people had with the spider, is that the legs just look really creepy. This is an entirely custom walk cycle built using sine waves and cos waves, and I think it looks pretty good. You can see that I've also got a custom system for when the spider looks at you. When it raises its head to look upwards at the player, which it often does because it's at a lower eye level than the player, it will also raise its abdomen as well. Look at me, please, my friend. Look at me. Can you look at me, please? Look at me. There's a player right here. Nope, he don't want to do it. Come on, look at me. I mean, I already showed it before. you already saw it. There we go. So he raises abdomen up, and that reflects the rotation of the head, as you can see there. So the higher up the spider is looking, the more raised the abdomen is. I do have some other ideas now for how to do the abdomen raising thing, which is actually just entirely taken from Fresh Animations, or I guess Fresh Animations probably isn't the only resource pack to do it, but it's probably just a better way of doing it. You can take the spider's aggression trait, which, you know, is like triggered whenever it's actually moving towards a player or something that it wants to fight, and then just use that to instead raise the abdomen, and that makes the spider appear bigger and scarier and more threatening. And the spider also has a custom death animation where it rolls over onto its back and its legs curl inwards, as you'd expect from a spider. I would really like to add random variation to the amount that the legs rotate. I think that would look much better. But at the time I was developing this, there was an unfortunate bug within EMF, which just didn't really allow us to use random number generators from the entity's UUID, which is typically the best way of doing it. That has now been resolved, so when I get around to remaking the spider model in the future with better tech and more interesting animations, I will definitely be doing that as well. The cave spider is a very similar story. I really like the cave spider. It's just a very like compressed version of the regular spider. It's still got these 2x2 voxel legs, but because it's so much smaller, they just look more tightly packed, and I think it looks really cute. Actually, I really like the cave spider. He's just a tiny little guy. It's kind of funny. And he's doing a spin. Cave spiders love to do that. So someone told me that this is actually just a bug in vanilla Minecraft because of the fact that cave spiders are so small. They're essentially that they're trying to reach the block they're already in, but because their hitbox is so tiny, they don't think they've reached the block that they were targeting yet, so they will pretty much always do this random shit whenever they reach a destination that they were trying to walk to. So, good job, Mojang. You've done it again. You've done it again. But yeah, so cave spiders have a slightly different set of eyes. You can see here that the regular spider has 3 eyes on the front of its face and 1 on the side. The cave spider has 2 on the front of its face, 1 on the top, and one on the side, just to give it a little bit more of a visual distinction as well. Again, this was more of an experiment into learning more CEM tech, and I'm happy with the outcome. I really like the systems that I designed for these two guys, but yeah, it's due for an upgrade in the future for sure. Next up, I want to talk about the chests, and these are actually custom entity models, which you'd be surprised by, perhaps, but you'll see when I open them that they do actually have custom animations. My chests only open a third of the amount compared to the regular vanilla chest, which is purely a stylistic choice. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, that also works on the double chest as well, so it's the same animation. It's just a third of however far the top of the chest would usually open. I think it looks kind of dumb in vanilla when the chest swings all the way up, especially when you have a wall directly behind the chest and it just like clips into it massively. So I thought it would be more sensible and just, again, more visually distinct to have the chest rotate in a more calm fashion. The inside of the chest is also modeled. There isn't really much of a logic to this. It's just purely for the fact that I didn't really know what to do with the inside of the chest, and I think modeling the inside of it works perfectly fine. There isn't really a good way of displaying what's inside the chest using a model. I mean, you could do it with like random entities and just have like a random assortment of junk in there, but then it probably is not going to match up with what you've actually got stored in the chest. There's no way of checking what's in the chest, no good way of doing that. It would be really cool if you could just like stack a bunch of items inside the chest based on what's actually inside the large chest's contents here. But that's just, I mean, come on, that's like well beyond the capabilities of vanilla Minecraft and resource packs, and even modded resource packs. So, never mind. But the little change in animation I think looks pretty good, and I do quite like that. And the inside of the chest being modeled, again, just makes it a little bit more visually interesting as well. Over here we have trapped chests, which are a very similar story. However, trapped chests have no visual distinction on the outside, which when I first added this, some people kind of complained and said, like, that's too evil. What if I get pranked and there's a trap chest and I just have absolutely no way of telling until it's already too late and you see that dastardly tripwire hook inside the chest? I think this is a pretty cool system. I already established before with the creepers that I like to be a little bit evil with my packs. I think there's no reason why you shouldn't make Minecraft more difficult in these little niche ways. So yeah, the inside of the trap chest is modeled with this tripwire hook, as you can see here, complete with animations that reflect the opening of the top of the chest. And again, the idea is that you open a trap chest, and then when you close it, oh no, it's too late. You see the tripwire and you realize that things are gonna blow up, most likely. The Conduit is a block that exists in Minecraft, in case you forgot. When you place a conduit inside of a Prismarine cage like this, it gets a really interesting entity model, which is kind of an experiment more than anything else, but again, it's in Caelesti, so it's worth talking about. The conduit is like surrounded by these floating glyphs, which are again the same glyphs that appear on the enchanting table language, and if memory serves, these glyphs are the first letter of the effects you actually get from the conduit power, which I believe are water breathing. So one of these glyphs is the W, and also night vision, or maybe like aqua affinity because of the mining boost that you get from this thing. So I don't know, but the glyphs represent letters that are relevant to the effects you actually get from the conduit. This was again more of a test just to see if this kind of a system would actually look good. I haven't touched the conduit outside of this like custom effect surrounding it. But yeah, you can do CEM animations for the conduit, which I think is pretty neat. Next up, I want to talk about the Enderman, and the Enderman does actually have a CEM model, surprisingly. I've not done a texture for the Enderman, I've not done my usual bizarre Caelesti related features for the Enderman, but it does have a CEM model, which has only a single purpose, which I'll try my best to demonstrate now. So here we are in the end. And yeah, it's kind of difficult for me to show this one off because it only happens under really specific circumstances, which do occur. I do actually... Oh, I'm going to have to lower that in post, never mind. Bad dragon. Well, I have strength. Oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, when the dragon comes to land on the exit portal, it will very often bump into a bunch of Endermen. It will basically just fly through any Enderman that is nearby, and Endermen have a custom entity model which is designed to do a really specific thing when this specific thing happens. So it's quite rare, you will rarely ever see it, but as I said, it does happen. But I'm going to need the dragon to land on the podium in order to show this off, and even then it might not happen. So I'm just going to flood the end with Enderman in the hopes that it happens somewhat soon. Okay, here we go. So yeah, you definitely saw it just then. But what's going to happen is she's going to fly through the Enderman, And they fucking fly away like they spin out of control, which I think looks so good. I'm going to try and get another recording of that because I feel like it's not too obvious. But yeah, the Endermen have a system where if they fly upwards more than a single block, because of course Endermen can just like step up the side of blocks like that, which would count as them moving up a block. If they move up 2 blocks quite quickly, then they instead switch to this random rotation, which just rotates them across every axis and makes their arms flail around like crazy. And I think it looks hilarious. I think it looks great. This was a really simple test just to showcase that this was even possible. I noticed this particular thing happening, how the dragon occasionally just barges through all the Endermen near the portal, and immediately I got in touch with Ewan and I was like, hey, can I do this thing? And Ewan loved the idea, and we put it together in like a couple of hours, and I thought it looked absolutely great, so yeah. I'll wait around, see if she lands again, and I'll try and get a better shot of this in action. Hello, can you land, please? I need you to land, please. She's doing it, Okay, she's gonna land. And as she lands, she's going to hit them. And they fucking go flying. And then as she takes off, it's going to happen again. And we'll see it, yeah. Gotta be one of my favorite features in Caelesti. It's such a simple thing. I haven't touched Enderman yet, but regardless of what I do with Enderman in the future, they're keeping that feature. I love that feature so much. It's such a dumb thing that the dragon can even damage Enderman at all, because like they're supposed to be. Well, I don't know. Are they her victims? Do they like her? Does she like them? I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's funny that this specific thing happens quite frequently when you're fighting the dragon. And yeah, I took advantage of that specific scenario and made my Enderman fly through the air like crazy men. And moving on to the Wither Skeleton, which is the very same model as the skeleton. I just realized I didn't update the breastbone of the Wither Skeleton compared to the skeleton. He's going to burn straight away, so this isn't going to be a great example. But you see, the skeleton... Yeah, never mind. So the skeleton has a slightly different model to the Wither Skeleton now. This is actually just a mistake on my part. I reduced the size of the breastbone on the regular skeleton because it was too big. But I forgot to do the same on the Wither Skeleton, so he's still got the 4x4 breastbone segment. Oh, maybe I should probably update that. I'll update that at some point in the future, I think. But yeah, so the Wither Skeleton has the same death. It falls apart. It bounces. Thank you, Ewan. Very cool system. But yeah, the Wither Skeleton is a little bit different in that each of its individual elements get rotated quite randomly. And this is just to make the Wither Skeleton look a little bit more deranged, a little bit more broken, a little bit more withered. And I think it looks pretty good. This right here might be the most abstract feature I've ever added to Caelesti, and I really like it. This is my Strider, believe it or not, which if you couldn't tell by the fact that it's stood on lava. And what I wanted to do with this Strider was completely recreate their model and turn them into these lava ants, as they've been dubbed. And I think they look pretty good. There's a lot of custom animation work going on here. When I mentioned before about the spider being the first thing I touched in about 4 years, the last thing was this Strider. This used to be the most complex CEM animation model that I'd made. Custom entity model animation model. Wait, no. See, this was the most complex CEM feature I developed up until a point. It has now been replaced by the spider and also the creeper, arguably, as well. But it's still a pretty cool feature. I do really like it. So the entire Strider has been replaced. All of these models are actually stemming from one of the Strider's legs, because it's a more stable element across the Strider's, like, 3 primary models that it has. So yeah, all of these are stemming from the Strider's leg, would you believe it? But yeah, what happens here is all of the legs are custom animated using sine and cos waves, and we also have custom ambient animations, which are really simple, sine and cos again. This was all I knew at the time, was just sine and cos. That was all I was really using. But the antennae, they wiggle back and forth like that, which looks pretty nice. You've also got the hairs on the legs, they also wiggle as well. I did want to keep the fact that Striders drop string, which is what drove me to keep the hairs on the Strider's legs, but I think it looks pretty good anyway, right? It just fits the model, it suits the guy, for sure. And of course you can ride Striders as well. That's not convenient. I don't want to kill him though. I'm not going to kill him, I'm going to leave him, I'm going to let him be. So if I get a Strider and a Glowshroom on a stick, as it's called, then we can saddle up and we can ride a Strider just like that. The saddle model does not work. You, you can see a tiny bit of it there, rendering really weirdly on the back of the strider. At the time that I developed this strider, it wasn't actually possible to model the saddle on mobs like this, so I just didn't do it. It's definitely possible now. It's 100% possible to model the saddle on this thing now. So once again, like with so many features that I've talked about today, this could also do with a bit of an overhaul as well. And definitely a texture upgrade. Because again, it's a very limited color palette being used for this guy right now. But I think it's a really interesting feature. I think it's more interesting than the vanilla strider. It's personal preference, right? Some people don't like how abstract this is. They think it's too weird that the strider is so vastly different compared to its vanilla equivalent. But I think it's pretty good. I quite like this strider, and I don't have any plans to remove it. I would consider adding rest backup support for it in the future to downgrade it to a more simplified and vanilla-esque model. But for the time being, I really like this. I think it's a neat feature. And it feels very Caelesti to have such an abstract feature to replace a relatively simple feature from vanilla. But yeah, the only other thing worth talking about is that the strider is supposed to have 2 different animation states for its legs. Oh, it does. You can see how crazy the legs look right now. But this feature doesn't work entirely perfectly. We didn't have all of the same tech from Blockbench back in the day, which allowed us to preview animations with, like, you know, limb swing and various other traits that you could just do checkboxes and sliders for. So I was kind of just eyeballing everything that I did and then reloading in-game to see it for myself. Yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just view all of the animation states within Blockbench using its animation viewing system, which is so convenient. So in the future, when I get back to editing this guy once more, I probably will approach the legs again because they look so ridiculous. But yeah, essentially what this state is supposed to do is have 2 different walk cycles based on how fast the strider is moving, but it doesn't look too great. I mean, the top-down profile of the legs looks ridiculous. But I think from side on it looks kind of fine. It just looks like you'd expect from a hexapodal animal. But yeah, so striders are pretty neat. They do also have a different texture for when they're not in lava, which just makes them dull and depressive because they miss their sweet, sweet lava, I guess. So I'll dump this guy back on here. There we go, and we'll leave him to it. Oh, look at that, animations. Custom animations. I believe that's a mod that I have installed, which makes you have more animations based on various things. And here we are back at the beginning looking at Bedrock once again. So what I've set up here is a little pit down into hell, quite literally. This is the nether wastes biome down here. There is a custom feature for Bedrock which only happens in the nether. If you reach the very bottom of the nether, this is currently Y0 that we're at, right? Well, Y1 that I'm stood at. Bedrock spawns up to Y level 4 in the nether. And if you find Bedrock at the very bottom of the world, it will have this reddy crimson coloration instead of its usual dull bluey grey appearance that you have here. At the top of the nether, you still get the regular color of Bedrock. I was going to say netherrack then for some reason, but yeah, you still get the regular color of Bedrock. And the implication here, as there's really no point to this, but I kind of like it. If you're at the bottom of the nether, you have this Bedrock, but if you're at the top of the nether, you have this Bedrock. Maybe with the implication being that the nether is stacked below the overworld. I don't know. I mean, you can get above the bedrock ceiling in the nether. Everyone does, right? It's perfect for portal travel and getting around and building piglin farms. So it doesn't really make any sense. But I think it's just kind of neat that the bedrock at the very bottom of the nether has a unique appearance. So yeah, bedrock is pretty sweet. On the subject of CTM, we have the most complicated CTM setup in Caelesti. And this is kind of a mock-up or just an example of how brick-like blocks could look in the future. Bricks start out with this fully grey appearance with custom side textures. You can see here, very similar to how the oak logs work, we have different textures on the north and south faces, and then unique textures on the east and west faces. I'm not actually sure which direction I'm facing right now. Is that east? Yeah, that's east, that's west. So north, south, east, west, and then up, down also have 2 unique textures as well, which have this sort of like one larger brick in the center. As you build out though, you will see that bricks do have CTM. First of all, you'll see it on the top face where we have the typically colored red clay bricks on the underneath with quite a bit of variety here, the occasional dull gray brick thrown in. And as you build vertically, you'll see something quite similar where we have these like corner bricks, which are white and pale, and then the central bricks will have the reddy clay appearance that you probably expect to see. This is a ridiculously complicated CTM system. I don't really... I mean, what's the point, right? Like, it doesn't even look that good. I mean, could you even realistically build with this? It's already so complicated. How do you mix other blocks into this? It does... but yeah, as you can see here, the bricks within the brick patterning are also very random. You can see there that the black ones stand out especially, but there are actually, I believe, 4 different types of bricks that can spawn. So we've got like a light colored one, there's like a mid gray one, a more deep red one, and then just the black one, which gives quite a lot of variety. And this is of course based on how houses look in the United Kingdom. If you couldn't tell, I'm British, unfortunately. But yeah, so a lot of the time, brick houses will be built with a variety of random-looking bricks, and there's no real thought put into where the bricks are actually placed. It is just quite random, and that is what I've tried to reflect in this pattern right here. So to go into a little bit of detail about what the CTM is actually doing, what we have here is a CTM repeat system, which means that these bricks on either side of the brick block will always line up correctly. And then we also have a CTM random system, which randomizes the individual blocks within each within each face of the brick. And then on top of all of that, we also have a full CTM system, which is checking to make sure that the edges have this sort of a system. And of course, the top and bottom also have those grayed bricks as well. So there is quite a lot going on here. It's like multiple layers of CTM that are all targeting other layers of CTM to create this this quite nifty effect in the end. So yeah, you have very, very random looking bricks with a nice little border to go on them as well. They don't always work perfectly. You can see there are some situations where it looks a bit odd. Like that brick right there is half white and half red because this specific setup doesn't work particularly well. My thinking is that if you're going to build bricks, then do it in a specific way if you're using Caelesti, and you'll get nice appearances. But yeah, you can actually avoid this entirely as well. If you want to just not make use of these bricks, you can just build with brick half slabs, and they'll have the regular brick appearance because the CTM system just simply isn't applied to the bricks that are used in the half slab bricks. So you just get a very similar system with the CTM repeat and the randomized individual bricks, but you don't get the very obnoxious bordering effect as well. So it's a pretty cool system. Again, it's more of a proof of concept just to showcase that something like this is even possible in the first place. But I think the concept is neat, and we're all about inspiration in this video, right? So take some inspiration. We've already seen this multiple times throughout today's video, but dandelions do of course have multiple variants based on what biome they're in. So on top of the usual stem color map that gives dandelions a unique appearance in a number of different environments, you also have an entirely unique dandelion variant, which I'm labeling the scattering dandelion, which appears in snowy biomes and also pine biomes, like pine, tiger, spruce, tiger biomes. So you have these like white dandelions instead. Again, it's just more of a visual distinction between two different climates. It kind of goes into the idea that dandelions do have two very distinct appearances in the real world, depending on what stage of their life cycle they're currently at. And my thought process is that in this sort of an environment, they're going to be leaning towards scattering dandelions. Obviously, in the real world, this is a seasonal change, and it's not impossible to have dandelions animated based on the time within the game, or even just the time that the game has been open, but I don't like doing that sort of a thing. I think that leads to more problems than solutions it creates. But yeah, I think this is just an interesting way of having the two visually distinct dandelion variants, just simply depending on what climate you're in. So before we get into the custom sounds of Caelesti, which I've got a little section set up for over there, I do want to talk quickly about the Shulker boxes. There is a mod included in Fabulously Optimized, which simply ports over the Optifine GUI system. I believe the mod is quite literally just called OptiGUIs, which it's fine, it does the job. There isn't really much of an improvement to be made in this area, in my opinion. And what I've used this for is, I mean, first of all, we've already seen the beacons, which have a different GUI based on how big the pyramid underneath the beacon actually is. But with Shulker boxes, what you have is a different colored GUI, which reflects the color of the Shulker box. And this applies to all 16 dyed variants of the Shulker box, and also the default one. It is kind of a dull purpley color that we have here. So we have a white GUI and gray, and this is the regular color. I assigned the regular GUI color to the is this the grey? Yeah, just grey shulker box. Has like the regular grey, and then black is even darker. We have brown, red, orange. You get the idea. So all of these shulker boxes have a custom coloured GUI which reflects their colour. Really simple feature. Just helps to distinguish between your different shulker boxes. And yeah, it's more just a case of showcasing that once again that this is a thing that you can do. So yeah. So with that out of the way, we've now covered every single feature in Caelesti that you can see, and that brings us to the sounds of Caelesti as the final little segment here that I want to go over. We're nearly there. We're nearly at the end. It's the last thing. So yeah, we're getting there. So without further ado, I want to go into some of the custom sounds of Caelesti. Caelesti has a really dynamic rain ambience system. Usually, in the base game, the rain is just a collection of sounds that get randomly layered on top of each other whenever the rain is raining. And what I've done is simply add to that list to give it even more variety. And there are a couple of other style sounds thrown in there as well. So the wind that you sometimes hear when you're in the Soul Sand Valley also plays when it's raining. That's just a direct reference to the vanilla Soul Sand wind effect. And we also have these really light, distant sound effects of thunder, which are play occasionally when it's raining as well. So the implication there being that it's thundering somewhere far away, but it's just so far away that you can't actually see it. You're just hearing the very, very after effect of that sound traveling however far it has. There you go, you can hear one there. I might actually turn the background volume up for this segment, just so you can actually hear what's going on. But if it sounds reasonable, I probably won't. But yeah, I do really like the sound of rain. I think it sounds really calming. Usually in the base game, I think rain is just kind of annoying. It's very loud, very obnoxious. But my rain sounds are intentionally a lot more subtle, a lot more calm. And whenever it's raining, I actually quite enjoy listening to it now. So yeah, custom rain is pretty nice. But yeah, I'll remove the rain though, because it's going to interrupt other sound effects. So all the doors in Caelesti also have a custom sound profile, which just includes the old door sound effects. So I believe the way this system works is originally when doors were added, they had 4 different sounds. And to me, those sounds are iconic. And then modern Minecraft has 6 sound effects for the doors. So what I've done is just simply put all of those sound effects together so you have a combination of old and new. So there's one of the new sound effects, and that's an old sound effect. So that's new, and that's old. And that's old, and that's also old. So you get like a combination of different sound effects from old and new Minecraft with every single door in the game. Well, I say every single door. This doesn't actually apply to the metal doors, the iron and... Well, the copper door isn't in the game in the version that I'm playing right now, but when it is, it doesn't count. So all of the wooden doors of Caelesti use old and new sounds. Apparently they use the old sounds a lot more. Have I weighted them weird? I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe go check the sounds.json for yourself if you're interested to find out. But I like this feature. I think it's good. I don't know what it is. It's just the old door to me is just really... It's just an iconic sound. I used to always like enjoy that moment of having built my first dirt hut with a wooden door and hearing... And now it's only doing the new sound effects, yeah. There you go. Hearing that like iconic over-the-top door sound like it's being slammed shut in the most dramatic manner. Next up we have the Ghast, which is actually another reference to Minecraft Dungeons. I did mention before, earlier in the video, about how I'd already taken some of the sound effects and even the textures, in the case of the terracotta, directly from Dungeons. And yeah, Ghasts have custom sounds. So there's a bit of a story behind this, actually. I'm going to leave him chilling there so we can listen to these sound effects as I yap away. But essentially, Minecraft Dungeons comes with a number of custom Ghast sound effects, which in my opinion sound really good, way better than the ones that we have in vanilla. So what I did was take all, I think 6 of those sound effects and add them to the Ghast sound profile, so whenever you'd have an ambient Ghast sound, it would pick between the vanilla ones and the Minecraft Dungeons ones. The only problem was that the Minecraft Dungeons sounds come with this sort of echoing effect, which makes it seem as though the Ghast is in some giant cave, which I guess the nether kind of is. They have a huge amount of echo to them, as you can no doubt hear. So what I did was take the vanilla Ghast sounds and then try my absolute best to reflect that same echoey behavior with the vanilla sounds. So we have 6 sounds from Minecraft Dungeons, and I believe 4 sounds from vanilla, which have had echo added to them. Just a really simple sound filter with an Audacity, which is the only audio software I've ever really touched. And yeah, I think they sound really good. I think they sound really, really good. They sound really ambient in the nether, which I think is great. The nether is essentially just a big cave, so it does make sense that this large and booming entity would have a sort of echoing effect to it, right? Next up, we have the Dispenser, which is a very similar system to the door. I just really like the old Dispenser sound effect. That's it. That's all the changes. I choose to use the old Dispenser sound. That's the whole thing. So it's at this point that it's probably a really good idea to talk about the bow and the reason why I have a sounds.json in the first place. When I was coming up with a new sound profile for the bow, I realized that there are a number of different features in the game that all use the exact same sound effects. So for example, if you throw an egg and a snowball, it's the same sound. There's no difference at all. It's just the exact same sound effect for the snowball and the egg being thrown, right? And I believe that sound effect is also used for the bow, or at least it was at some point in the past, and I didn't like that. So I made a custom sound for the bow, which has an entirely different sound. In my opinion, just sounds more appropriate for the bow. And of course, the Dispenser also uses that sound effect. So it was actually this feature that got me to introduce the support for sounds.json, which allows you to, specify different sounds for the same features. Because the way that it usually works in vanilla is you have a sound effect for the bow, which references the generic thrown projectile sound, and then the same thing is referenced by the Dispenser and the egg and the snowball, but you can change those to reference a completely unique sound for this specific case, and that's what I had to do. So yeah, the bow has a custom sound as well, which sounds swoopy. What can I say? Swoopy. Swoop. Next up, I want to showcase a custom sound effect I have in the game for falling, which kind of sounds like breaking your legs most of the time. Never mind, that was just the regular sound. But there's quite a number of different variants that get used for the fall damage sound effect. This is just... There you go, so that was the leg breaking one. So there's a number of different sound effects that have been used for the fall damage sound across the many, many years of development of Minecraft. There's a really old school one as well, which I'm probably not going to be able to get because it's... There it is, yeah, I got it, nice, yeah, there you go. The classic sound from like old school Minecraft. I believe that sound actually played whenever you took damage, but in my mind, receiving damage is an event that happens far too frequently. Fall damage specifically is something that's quite a bit more rare. So what I wanted to do was basically use all of these old hurt sounds that you have from ancient versions of Minecraft and throw them in as rare variants of the fall damage sound effect. So, ow, fucking broken legs. Ooh. It's supposed to be rare, that one, I swear. I think it is quite rare. It's just random chance, right? So, yeah. Yeah, there you go. So there's a good number of sound effects for this. I think there's like 5 different sound effects, some of which are from modern Minecraft. It's just the current sound that you would usually get. And then, of course, you have lower weighted variants, which are references to old sound effects that are no longer in the game. And I think it's just a bit of novelty, right? It's just... bit more fun. Next up, I wanted to talk about a custom sound effect in the game for the Enderman. This is also taken from Minecraft Dungeons, and I don't know in what context it's used in Minecraft Dungeons, but it's a really specific sound that I'm very likely not going to be able to show you in this video. But it happens when an Enderman teleports. There is actually a sound effect that plays when an Enderman teleports, and it plays at the location the Enderman teleports to. So unless I can find a way to get an Enderman to teleport directly next to me, I'm not going to be able to show you this one. I actually am going to do some editing for this video in the end. I've decided I'm going to go back and maybe add some visuals as well. So yeah, so what I'll do is just play this sound now. Yeah, so that's the... Oh, you just did it. You just did it in game. I just heard it. It was quiet because he was far away, but now he's teleporting away because it's daytime and he's upset. Maybe he'll teleport near me. Teleport near me. Teleport near me. Come on. Do it. Do the thing. Come on. No. So yeah, that sound effect plays whenever an Enderman teleports to you. I think it sounds pretty good. It's a bit of a jump scare sometimes when an Enderman just happens to teleport right next to you by pure chance, and you get this kind of weird... Oh, he just did it! He just did it! Okay, I'm still going to edit the sound in, but yeah, you get it. So whenever an Enderman teleports next to you, you get that sound effect playing. I think it sounds really interesting. It sounds really cool for the Enderman to have that custom sound effect play whenever he comes nearby. So yeah, there are also a number of sound effects associated with the nether portal as well. This one actually is quite a bit interesting. There's more going on with this one than meets the eye. So when I was making the Ghast sound effects, I thought it would be a really neat idea to imply that those booming sounds of the Ghast were traveling from the nether into the overworld. Now, you can't differentiate the sounds of a nether portal based on which dimension it's in, so nether portals in the nether will also play this sound, which is... I guess an unfortunate side effect, but it doesn't really matter because you're already in the nether and you could just say it's coming from far away. But you can occasionally hear the cries of a Ghast coming from a nether portal, and I'm really hoping that it's going to happen, but it's pretty rare. Oh, there was one there. Did you get that? It was really quiet, really distant, but you do occasionally hear it. You actually hear it a lot more frequently if it's a really big... Oh! Yeah, you see, there's another one just there. If you have a really big portal, the sound effect happens more because every nether portal sound is being played by the individual portal block. So the more portal blocks there are, the more frequently that sound will play. But it also has a custom attenuation system as well. So if you're stood far away from the nether portal, you simply can't hear those Ghast cries. It's only if you're within a certain range of the portal blocks that you can actually hear the additional Ghast cries coming through. Oh, it's so good, right? It just sounds like a really far away Ghast, and you can just about hear it coming through the portal. I think that's a really neat feature. It's a really interesting thing to add to portals. There is also a custom sound effect that plays whenever you're walking over snow. So every block in the game has a sound associated with it being stepped on. Polytone has already implemented this fix, but it doesn't work. The tinted grass doesn't... Never mind, that's an issue for another day. But yeah, so whenever you step on a block in the game, there is a sound associated with it. There's a sound associated with grass, there's a sound associated with stone, and there's also a custom sound in Caelesti associated with snow, which I think sounds pretty good. It's just the sound of a boot stepping in snow. It's got that kind of crisp crunchiness to it that you'd expect from freshly fallen snow, and I just think it sounds really pleasant, to be honest. I really like this sound effect. And here it is, we've reached the end, the final feature that I want to showcase in this video. Well done, you did it. You got through 3.5 hours of Caelesti content. Oh my, I hope you watched this video in 2 sittings, because like if you didn't, wow, impressive, really. But yeah, this final feature is a little bit awkward to showcase. I don't know why. I've toggled a lot of the game rules in this world. Like there's no mob spawning right now and there's no daylight cycle. There's a bunch of variables that have been changed. And for whatever reason, it seems to have messed with these, or at least it had last time I was on here. Is it going to work? Yeah, so for whatever, I don't know why, for whatever reason in this world, the stalactites just don't make any sound. I have no idea why. I have no idea why these aren't making sound. I think it's to do with the game rule I've changed. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me what. There is a game rule associated with doing sound effects. It is enabled. Otherwise, like, nothing would have worked, I believe. But yeah, so I can't showcase it here. But I was prepared, so I'll be back in a jiff. So here we are in my showcase environment world. This is where I just, like, take video segments of biomes and record my little campfire scene. So for whatever reason, the sound effects are working in this world. Again, I have no idea why this is happening, but you'll have to just... let me know if you do know. Like, why would that happen? Why would a certain world just not have a specific sound effect working? I have no idea. Anyway. So, as we know, when you break a stalactite and it falls to the ground, it makes a breaking sound. However, in Caelesti, there is a custom sound effect which occasionally plays whenever these stalactites break. And there it was. I don't know what it is, but that specific sound effect of, like, I think it's supposed to be a vase being smashed. It's so overused. Now that I've pointed it out, you're going to notice it. Next time you watch a movie or a TV show or even play a game, just keep in mind this sound effect exists. There you go. So yeah, this is purely just for me, really. I just think it's quite funny that this sound effect is so incredibly overused. But the reason why I have these pots here, what are these called again? Decorated pot, even though they're not decorated by default, but never mind. When I added this sound effect to the game, because I just wanted to add it in some way, this was the most appropriate thing I could find. Something that doesn't happen too often, but could happen if you're playing in a specific way. That's the kind of thing that I was looking for this sound effect. I didn't want it to be happening too frequently because of how obnoxious the sound effect is. But like breaking stalactites with a bow or a trident, how often do you actually do that? You know? So given how rare of a circumstance that actually is, I thought that was the most appropriate way of adding that sound effect. But what I have now done, given that decorated pots have been added to the game, is also add that same breaking sound to pots. How did that happen? I don't even know. There you go. So whenever you break a pot, there is a chance, there you go, that it will play that really dramatic sound of a pot being broken. There you go. It's so over the top, like it's so extreme. There you go. But I just love it. I don't know why. I think it's so fun. And again, it's not like too common of a sound effect to play when you're breaking these. There you go. So in like a vanilla setting, if you're finding these in... Do these spawn in dungeons? I feel like they should spawn in dungeons. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not actually sure. But whenever you have these in your world, you won't find them in this setup. You're not going to find like a huge field of decorated pots to smash through. So when you're breaking them, you will only occasionally hear this sound effect play if you're breaking a large number of them in a given setting. Although I would actually, yeah, I would actually consider making the sound effect more rare, specifically for the decorated pots, just because of how much I'm finding it now. Yeah, see that like it playing twice in quick succession, that's something I definitely don't want to have. So yeah, I definitely consider lowering the weight of that sound effect in the future. But the sound effect does also play whenever you break a decorated pot. That would have been perfect, but it didn't happen. And with that, we've reached the end of the list. That was every single feature included in Update 47 of Caelesti. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this was a great source of inspiration for your own projects, or even just a great source of clarity on what you're actually getting if you choose to download Update 47. If this is somehow your first time seeing my channel, or you've not already got Update 47, you can get it for yourself. Right now, it's available for download on both CurseForge and Modrinth. Modrinth download preferred for the obvious reasons. But yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And stay tuned. I got some more devlogs in the works right now. I'm currently in the process of updating the pack to 121.11, even though I believe 26.1 is probably going to come out somewhat soon. I can never keep up with Mojang's release schedule, but that's just it's the life of a modded pack dev, I guess. But yeah, so keep an eye out for some more videos coming out in the next few weeks. I've got some pretty exciting stuff that I'm working on right now. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did like the video, do throw me a like. It helps to, I think, show other people the video. And yeah, if you see the hype option as well, that would be pretty cool. I still don't know how the hype option works, but if you see an option to do it, then I guess do that too. And if you're somehow not subscribed and you want to see more of my content in the future, then do subscribe as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you soon for some more Caelesti content. Until next time, take care, and bye-bye.